I found myself standing at the edge of a forgotten road. The cracked asphalt slick with dew, and the faint shimmer of fog curling around my feet like spectral fingers. Before me, a flickering neon sign cast a sickly glow, a jarring splash of color in the murk that read simply, "Carnival of Shadows." The letters blinked unevenly, some barely legible, as if the very sign struggled to maintain its hold on existence. I had no memory of how I arrived here, only a nagging compulsion that pulled me forward, deeper into the fog and toward that eerie beacon. The air was thick with the scent of burnt sugar and rust, a twisted perfume that clung to my skin and whispered of long-forgotten joys turned sour. From somewhere beyond the veil of mist, a faint, dissonant laughter trickled through the night, a hollow, chilling sound that crawled beneath my skin and made my heart stutter. Compelled by forces I could neither understand nor resist, I stepped forward, the gravel crunching beneath my feet like the brittle bones of forgotten memories. The carnival sprawled before me, a grotesque tableau of faded grandeur and creeping decay. Gaudy tents, their stripes faded and torn, rippled unnaturally in a breeze I could not feel. Above me, strings of broken lights blinked erratically, casting fractured shadows that danced and twisted like living things. The rides themselves seemed to breathe, their rusted gears and twisted metal limbs pulsing with a sinister life. The cursed laughter swelled, echoing through the carnival's hollow heart, wrapping around me like a shroud. Somewhere nearby, a voice boomed boisterous, larger than life, yet tinged with an edge of cruel mockery. Step right up, it called, a clarion summons that pierced the night. The carnival barker, a figure cloaked in shadow and spectacle, beckoned me forward. His words twisted through the air, taunting and promising torment in equal measure. My feet moved of their own accord, drawn toward the towering Ferris wheel that loomed like a skeletal giant against the sickly moonlight. Its cabins swayed gently, creaking with a sound that echoed like a death knell through the stillness. The cursed laughter reached a maddening crescendo, wrapping tighter around my mind, tightening like a noose. I hesitated at the base of the wheel, the weight of something unseen pressing down on my chest. The air thrummed with a terrible promise. Here, within this carnival that appeared only for the guilty, my sins would be laid bare. My past, long buried beneath layers of denial, would unravel with each turn of this cursed ride. Then, with a breath caught between fear and resolve, I stepped into the cabin. The door shut behind me with a hollow clang, sealing me within this twisting nightmare. The Ferris wheel groaned to life, its ancient machinery turning slowly, inexorably. The world outside blurred into darkness, and the cursed laughter settled around me like a storm waiting to break. As the wheel began its first rotation, I felt the first sharp sting of a memory clawing its way to the surface, a fragment of guilt, a whisper of betrayal. The carnival was no mere illusion. It was a manifestation of my own moral decay, a relentless torment designed to force me to confront the shadows I had long sought to bury. I gripped the cold metal bar before me, my knuckles white with tension, as the carnival's sinister light flickered through the cabin window. The cursed laughter echoed once more, a chilling reminder that escape was no simple matter. The ride had begun, and with it, my descent into a personal hell where punishment wore the mask of carnival delight. And I was trapped, drawn irrevocably into this grotesque circus of sin and sorrow, where each rotation would peel back another layer of my soul, exposing the raw wounds beneath. The carnival was here for me, and I had no choice but to ride. The night stretched on, a canvas of shadows and cursed sound. Somewhere beyond the veil, the carnival barker's voice rose again, a twisted melody of mockery and menace. "No turning back now," he called. "The show has only just begun." I swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter on my tongue, and braced myself for what was to come. I found myself drawn deeper into the maw of this place, the air thick with a scent that was both metallic and sweet, like blood mingled with stale popcorn. The sky above was a sickening swirl of bruised purples and greens, as if the night itself was convulsing in silent agony. As I took a hesitant step forward, the carnival's distorted melody slithered through the air, a warped, dissonant tune that clawed at the edges of my mind. Ahead, the lights of the Ferris wheel dimmed and flickered erratically, casting fractured shadows that danced like grotesque phantoms. The laughter began again, low at first, a mere ripple in the oppressive silence, but then swelling into a chilling cackle that echoed off the warped metal and tattered fabric. It was laughter that didn't belong to joy, but to something cruel and ancient, a sound that gnawed at the soul. I stumbled into the Hall of Mirrors, a carnival staple that should have been familiar but here felt distorted beyond recognition. The glass reflected fragments of myself, broken and skewed into monstrous shapes. I saw eyes that were too wide, smiles that were too sharp, faces that twisted in agony and mockery. Each reflection whispered secrets I dared not remember, murmurs of guilt and shame. A sudden, piercing cackle shattered the heavy air. The laughing clown emerged from the shifting shadows, its face a grotesque mask of exaggerated features, a grin stretched impossibly wide, hollow eyes that burned with a mocking light. It danced around me, a maddening spiral of torment, its laughter weaving into the very fabric of my fear. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet were rooted in the cracked pavement, held fast by invisible chains forged from my own remorse. The carnival seemed to breathe around me, alive with a sinister pulse. The rides twisted and warped, their colors bleeding into one another, becoming fluid and unreal. The carousel horses' eyes glowed with a hateful intelligence, their wooden mouths open in silent screams. The funhouse warped and stretched, corridors folding impossibly in on themselves, as if the carnival was a living nightmare intent on swallowing me whole. Then, without warning, a memory surged from the depths of my mind, a flashback so vivid it burned through the carnival's illusions. I was there again, in a cold, sterile room, the harsh fluorescent lights flickering overhead. I saw the face of a friend I had betrayed, the look of shock and hurt etched deeply into their eyes. The weight of that betrayal pressed down on me with brutal clarity, raw and unyielding. It was a wound I had tried desperately to bury, but which now bled openly in the warped carnival mirrors. The cursed laughter swelled in response, a relentless tide that threatened to drown me. The laughing clown's face loomed close, its grin widening as if savoring my torment. I staggered back, but the carnival's twisted landscape shifted, closing in around me. The twisted rides and warped lights reflected the deepest parts of my shame, a cruel tableau of punishment and regret. From the shadows, the booming voice of the carnival barker cut through the cacophony, his tone both theatrical and menacing. "Step right up, sinner," he called, his voice a velvet blade slicing through the heavy air. "Face the truth, or be consumed by your own laughter." I shuddered, caught in the grip of a terror that was both external and internal. The cursed laughter echoed louder, a maddening chorus that seemed to seep into my very bones. The carnival was no longer just a place, it was a crucible, a mirror of my soul's darkest corners, demanding I confront the sins I had long denied. With trembling hands, I moved toward the next ride, uncertain if I was stepping closer to salvation or deeper into damnation. The shadows whispered, the laughter promised horrors yet to come, and the carnival's twisted heart beat steadily beneath my feet. As I braced myself for what lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. Here, in this nightmare made flesh, escape would not come without reckoning. And the cursed laughter would be the soundtrack to every step I took. The night stretched on, and with every flicker of the grotesque carnival lights, the whispers in the shadows grew louder, pulling me inexorably toward the next revelation of my guilt. There was no turning back now. The carnival had come for me, and it would not release its grip until I faced the darkest parts of myself. I swallowed hard, the air thick with the scent of decay and despair, and stepped forward into the abyss. The sign above read simply, Hall of Mirrors. Yet there was nothing simple about this place. The air itself seemed heavier, saturated with a disquiet that nestled deep within my chest. A cold breath of cursed laughter whispered through the gaps, a sinister prelude to what awaited inside. I hesitated at the threshold, the warped reflections of the carnival's garish colors fracturing across my face. My eyes caught their own haunted shadows, flickering in the glass like phantoms. Then, as if drawn by an unseen force, I stepped forward, crossing into the hall's maw. The moment I passed beneath the arch, the world fragmented. Mirrors towered on every side, their surfaces bending and twisting light into grotesque shapes and warped images. The carnival's vibrant colors splintered into shards of eerie greens, sickly yellows, and crimson reds that pooled in the depths of the reflections. My footsteps echoed hollowly, swallowed by the hall's labyrinthine geometry. My own reflection multiplied, 1,000 fractured shards of me fleeing in every direction. But these were no mere reflections, they were distortions, each one a caricature of guilt and betrayal. Some wore leering sardonic grins that split their faces in unnatural ways. Others wept silent tears that shimmered like broken glass. Their eyes, hollow and accusing, bore into my soul with the weight of unspoken sins. A sound rose beneath the surfacer, faint, insidious giggle that soon swelled into the cursed laughter I had come to know too well. It slithered between the mirrors, wrapping around me like a serpentine coil, pulling tighter with every step. The laughter was no longer just a background noise. It was a living thing, a predator stalking its prey. Images flashed in the glass, not mere reflections, but memory-shattered fragments of a past I had tried so hard to bury. Faces I had betrayed, moments of weakness and cruelty, exploded across the glass in surreal tableau. One reflection showed a hand pushing another away, a silent scream frozen in time. Another revealed whispered lies twisting into venomous smiles. The carnival's horrors blended seamlessly with these flashbacks, the line between nightmare and memory dissolving. Panic surged. I tried to look away, to find a clear path through the maze, but the mirrors seemed to close in, multiplying my sins with dizzying speed. Each step forward was met with another distorted accusation, another shard of guilt. The laughter reached a crescendo, a maddening chorus that clawed at my sanity. Then, from the edge of my vision, I caught a glimpse of the laughing clown. It lurked just beyond the mirror's reach, its distorted face illuminated by the flickering lights. The hollow eyes bored into mine with a merciless intensity, the exaggerated grin stretching impossibly wide. It seemed to mock not just me, but the very idea of escape. The clown's laughter mingled with the cursed chorus, a chilling symphony that echoed through the hall. I staggered back, heart pounding, breath ragged, feeling the walls close in as the reflections multiplied and convulsed. The mirrors no longer showed just my face. They revealed the fractured pieces of my soul, scattered and broken. A sudden gust of cold wind swept through the hall, rattling the mirrors and dimming the lights. The reflections shuddered, flickering between their grotesque forms and fleeting glimpses of who I once was, before betrayal, before guilt. For a moment, I glimpsed a fragile hope buried beneath the ruins. But the cursed laughter returned, louder and more relentless, shattering the fragile illusion. The clown's grin widened further, and I felt the unbearable weight of my sins pressing down, suffocating, relentless. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to meet the reflections head-on. I did this, I whispered, voice barely audible. I betrayed, I failed. I am responsible. The mirrors trembled. The laughter faltered, but only briefly. The hall held its breath, poised between despair and the faintest flicker of redemption. And then, as if sensing my resolve, the reflections began to shift. The grotesque faces softened, the accusing eyes blurred with sorrow. The shards of my broken past merged, forming a fractured, painful whole that I could no longer deny. I was trapped, yet somehow beginning to understand the cruel calculus of this carnival that to escape, I must face every shard of betrayal, every echo of guilt, until nothing remained hidden. The Hall of Mirrors was not just a ride. It was a reckoning. The cursed laughter faded to a haunting whisper, leaving me alone in the echoing silence of my own fractured soul. But even as I stepped forward, deeper into the carnival's nightmare, I knew the journey had only just begun. What else will I have to face before the Ferris wheel completes its turn? I wondered, the question hanging heavy in the cold air. And somewhere, in the shadows just beyond the shattered glass, the laughing clown's grin lingered, a promise that the torment was far from over. I moved cautiously among the warped stalls and faded banners, the murmur of cursed laughter weaving through the thick night air like a corrupting hymn. Then, from the depths of this living nightmare, it came a sound both familiar and abhorrent, the chilling, manic cackle of the laughing clown. At first, it was a whisper, a teasing ripple in the carnival's cursed symphony. Then it swelled, pouring from every direction, a madness-laced chorus that clawed at my sanity. From behind a cracked mirror booth, the laughing clown emerged like a grotesque apparition. Its face was an unspeakable distortion, painted in peeling white, smeared with streaks of crimson and black. The mouth stretched into a monstrous grin that seemed to fracture reality itself. Its eyes were hollow voids, endless pits that swallowed light and hope alike. The creature's presence was a physical assault. The air grew thick, heavy with the stench of rot and burnt sugar, a sickly carnival perfume that made my stomach churn. The clown's laughter rippled around me, echoing off twisted rides and shattered glass, a sound both childlike and nightmarish, mocking the very essence of my being. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat drowned beneath that cursed cacophony. I tried to run, but the ground beneath my feet warped and rippled like liquid, distorting the familiar paths into a labyrinth of torment. Tentacles of shadow stretched from the darkness, brushing cold against my skin, whispering secrets of my sins in voices I dared not name. Each step was heavier than the last, guilt manifesting as an invisible weight that bent my spine and dulled my senses. The laughing clown pursued me relentlessly, its laughter a cruel metronome to my faltering will. I stumbled into a tent, its interior a funhouse of mirrors, each reflecting warped versions of myself, faces twisted in pain, eyes filled with accusation and despair. The clown's image appeared in every fractured shard, its grin widening, laughter multiplying into a maddening chorus. "You cannot hide," it taunted, its voice a rasping echo that seemed to seep into my bones. "Your sins are the music to my dance." Desperation clawed at me. I forced myself to stand, to face this nightmare incarnate. "Why me?" I cried, voice cracking beneath the weight of my terror. "What do you want from me?" The clown's grin deepened, shadows swirling around its form like living smoke. "Punishment," it whispered. "Judgment. You must see yourself clearly, or be lost forever in this carnival of despair." A surge of defiance flared within me. I would not be consumed by this grotesque tormentor, no matter how deeply it burrowed into my soul. Gathering trembling strength, I stepped forward, eyes locked on those hollow orbs. "I will face you," I vowed, "but I will not surrender." For a moment, the laughter faltered, replaced by a silence so profound it rang in my ears. Then, with a final, echoing guffaw, the laughing clown dissolved into the swirling shadows, leaving me alone amid the flickering lights and the lingering scent of decay. Though shaken, I felt a new resolve harden within me. The carnival was no longer just a place of torment, it was a crucible. Each step forward was a step deeper into the heart of my own darkness, but also a chance to claw back into the light. The cursed laughter might never fully fade, but I would learn to endure it, to understand the source of my punishment, and perhaps, one day, seek redemption. The night pressed on. The Ferris wheel loomed above, its cabins swinging gently in the cold wind, each rotation a promise of revelations yet to come. Whatever horrors awaited, I knew I could not turn away. The carnival had come for me, and I had no choice but to face its cruel, twisted embrace. The air was thick with the scent of stale popcorn mingled with something far more sinister, decay, regret, and the unmistakable tang of fear. Each step I took seemed to echo in the hollow spaces between the carnival's grotesque attractions, and my eyes darted nervously at the shifting shadows that slithered just beyond the periphery of vision. I stumbled into a small clearing where the flickering glow of a solitary lantern cast dancing patterns on the cracked cobblestones beneath my feet. There, standing with an eerie calm that contrasted starkly with the madness surrounding us, was a figure. She was pale, so pale that her skin seemed almost translucent in the dim light, with hair like spun silver cascading softly over her shoulders. Dressed in faded carnival garb that had long lost its color and vibrancy, she exuded a quiet dignity that felt almost otherworldly. "You're far from the beginning," she said softly, her voice carrying a soothing cadence that cut through the din of cursed laughter. "But the path is not yet closed." I blinked, unsure if this apparition was another trick of my tortured mind or something more tangible. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice hoarse and trembling. She smiled faintly, a gesture both comforting and cryptic. "A traveler like you, once lost in this endless carnival of shadows. They call me Myra." The name echoed strangely in my ears, a beacon amidst the chaos. "Why are you here? What do you want from me?" Myra tilted her head, her gaze steady and compassionate, to guide those who still yearn for release. "You carry burdens heavier than you know, but they need not be your chains forever." Her words struck a chord deep within me, a fragile thread of hope woven through the dense fabric of despair. How do I escape this place?" A flicker of sadness crossed her silver eyes. "Escape is not found in running or denial. It is found in facing the truth that binds you and embracing it fully, even the parts you wish to forget." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on me like the oppressive carnival sky. "But the laughter, it never stops." She nodded slowly. "The cursed laughter is the voice of your guilt. It will not cease until you make peace with yourself." Together, we began walking through the shifting carnival paths, the grotesque rides looming like monsters in the darkness. Around us, shadows writhed and twisted, distorted faces leering from the cracked mirrors and faded posters. Yet, With Myra beside me, the suffocating grip of fear loosened, replaced by a tenuous thread of courage. "There is a way," she murmured, "but it demands more than endurance. It demands acceptance." Her words sank into my heart like cold rain, awakening a resolve I thought long buried beneath layers of remorse. I wanted to believe her, to grasp at this slender lifeline amid the storm of my torment. As we reached the edge of the clearing, Mira paused and looked back at me, her expression a blend of warmth and warning. "The journey ahead is perilous, but not without hope. Remember, the carnival reflects what you carry inside. To change the carnival, you must change yourself." Before I could ask more, she faded into the mist, her figure dissolving like a whisper carried away by the night wind. I stood alone again, surrounded by the cacophony of cursed laughter and the grotesque spectacle of the carnival. Yet, something inside me had shifted. The crushing weight of despair had not lifted, but a fragile spark of hope had been kindled, a hope that perhaps, through acceptance and forgiveness, I might find a way to silence the laughter and escape this endless nightmare. But the carnival had yet more horrors to reveal, and the path to redemption would be fraught with pain and revelation. Still, with Myra's words echoing in my mind, I took a hesitant step forward, ready or at least willing to face whatever came next. The cursed laughter swirled around me, sinister and relentless, but beneath it, I thought I heard a faint, almost imperceptible melody, the possibility of salvation just beyond the next turn. The carnival was alive with shadows, the twisted remnants of laughter and light flickering across the peeling paint and warped metal. From somewhere beyond, the unmistakable voice of the carnival barker boomed out, slicing through the thick silence like a blade. "Step right up, step right up. Witness the spectacle of your own failings. Face the ride where the truth is twisted and your sins laid bare." His voice was a grotesque melody, equal parts invitation and curse, resonating with manic glee that set my skin crawling. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me, the cursed laughter curling like smoke around my thoughts. The barker's gaunt figure emerged from the shadows, his coat shimmering faintly under the carnival's sickly neon glow. His eyes glinted with cruel delight, and his grin spread wide, sharp and unyielding. "Come now," he called, "don't keep your sins waiting." Reluctantly, I stepped forward, the boards creaking beneath me as I approached the entrance of the ride. The sign above read simply, "The Hall of Reckoning." Painted in chipped letters and surrounded by faded images of distorted faces, it promised a journey into the darkest corners of my conscience. The door groaned open, a maw leading into darkness, and I was swallowed by the suffocating gloom. Inside, the air was heavy and stale, thick with the scent of mildew and forgotten memories. Flickering bulbs cast uncertain glimmers on the warped mirrors lining the narrow corridor. Each step echoed, a hollow sound swallowed quickly by the oppressive silence. As I moved deeper, my reflection fractured and multiplied across the distorted glass. Faces stared back at me, twisted, monstrous, grotesque, bearing the weight of shame, anger, and regret. One reflected a sneer, another a silent scream. The images were not just mine. They were the culmination of every moment I had failed, every choice that had chipped away at what little light remained within me. The cursed laughter began softly at first, a low ripple beneath the pounding of my heart. It grew steadily, swelling into a maddening chorus that filled the air, reverberating against rusted metal and cracked paint. The sound seeped into my bones, tightening its grip, a relentless reminder that escape was impossible. I tried to close my eyes, to shut out the images and the sound, but they forced themselves into my mind's eye with cruel persistence. Flashes of memory intertwined with the carnival's horrors, a betrayal unspoken, a moment of cowardice, a glance turned away from suffering. Each one struck like a blow, raw and unforgiving. Suddenly, the mirrors began to warp further, the faces melting into one another, forming a grotesque tapestry of my failings. I staggered, the room spinning as the laughter crescendoed into a piercing shriek. The carnival barker's voice cut through the chaos again, sharp and taunting. "See what you've done, lost soul. There's no hiding here." I forced myself to steady my breath, the oppressive darkness pressing in from all sides. Somehow, amidst the torment, a flicker of something unyielding sparked within me, a stubborn ember of defiance. Was this the beginning of acceptance, or merely another trap in this endless nightmare? The ride came to its end with a sudden jolt, the door creaking open to reveal the barker standing beneath the flickering lights. His shadow stretched long and menacing, eyes gleaming with the weight of judgment. "Remember this, for the carnival never forgets," he whispered, voice dropping to a sinister growl. As I stepped back into the sickly glow of the midway, the cursed laughter ebbed but did not fade. It lingered like a poison in my veins, a reminder that the journey was far from over. The barker's challenge had been issued, and I was forced to confront not only the sins of my past, but the relentless torment that awaited with every turn of the Ferris wheel. I swallowed hard, steeling myself against the dread that coiled in my gut. The carnival was a mirror reflecting every fracture in my soul, and I could no longer deny the truths it revealed. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the crushing weight of guilt and fear, a fragile hope began to bloom, a hope that perhaps, through the torment, there might yet be a way out. But the laughter, it never truly ceased, and neither could I the next ride awaited. I moved cautiously through the carnival's labyrinthine alleys, the gaudy colors of the tents muted beneath a suffocating grey haze. Somewhere close, the cursed laughter pulsed soft at first, then swelling like a tide, a cruel chorus that mocked the very beat of my heart. As the Ferris wheel's slow rotation echoed in the distance, a sudden stillness fell over the path, as if the carnival itself was holding its breath. Then, out of the shadows, they emerged, pale, insubstantial figures drifting on the edge of vision, their forms flickering like disturbed reflections in a warped mirror. The shadow children, silent, watchful, and utterly devoid of life, they gathered like ghosts summoned from a forgotten graveyard. Their carnival clothes hung in tatters, faded and stained, the remnants of laughter long since silenced. Their faces were featureless voids hollows where eyes, mouths, and noses should have been, yet I felt them watching me, weighing the sins I had tried so desperately to bury. I stopped dead in my tracks, breath catching as one figure stepped closer, its translucent hand extending toward me. I recoiled instinctively, but the cold touch brushed my cheek, not with malice, but with a sorrow so profound it crushed the breath from my lungs. In that moment, the fog around us thickened and shifted, revealing a fragmented vision, a memory I had locked away in the darkest recesses of my mind. It was a cruel scene from my childhood, a betrayal so subtle and yet so devastating that it had haunted the edges of my conscience without ever fully claiming recognition. A friend I had abandoned, left to suffer alone while I turned away. The faces blurred, the voices muffled, but the guilt was as sharp and raw as if it had happened yesterday. The shadow child's touch was a reminder that these sins, though forgotten by the world, were etched indelibly upon my soul. A sudden, piercing cackle shattered the fragile silence. The laughing clown appeared, stepping from the shadows with grotesque grace. Its exaggerated grin stretched impossibly wide, the hollow eyes gleaming with cruel delight. It danced around me, each step punctuated by that cursed laughter, a sound that drilled into my mind and refused to relent. The clown's presence was a tormentor, a living embodiment of my fears and self-loathing, and it reveled in my unraveling. I wanted to scream, to run, to bury myself beneath the carnival's rotting tents and escape this nightmare. But the shadow children remained, their silent vigil unbroken, a spectral jury that judged my every falter. Their presence was a mirror to my soul, reflecting sins I had hoped would remain hidden forever. Summoning every ounce of courage, I pushed forward, my feet dragging through the mist that curled around the carnival like serpents. The figures receded into the shadows, their judgment lingering like a cold weight upon my chest. The cursed laughter crescendoed, filling the air with its merciless echo, but within me, something had shifted. I was no longer merely a victim of the carnival's horrors. I was a participant in its cruel game, forced to confront the darkness within. The path ahead was uncertain, and the burden of the shadow children's silent watch was heavy. But somewhere beneath the fear and despair, a fragile thread of resolve took hold. I had no choice but to face the memories, the sins, and the relentless punishment that awaited me. The carnival's nightmare was far from over, and the next rotation of the Ferris wheel promised deeper revelations and darker truths. With a trembling hand, I reached out toward the next ride, the cursed laughter echoing behind me like a shroud. The shadows lengthened, and the carnival whispered my name, beckoning me into the abyss of my own guilt. Shadows spilled from the carnival's twisted lights, pooling like ink on the cracked glass of the gondola where I sat. The air was thick with the scent of stale popcorn and rusting metal. But beneath it all lurked something far fouler, miasma of guilt and dread that clung to my skin like a second shadow. I pressed my forehead against the cold window, eyes searching the warped reflections that danced before me. The carnival's lights flickered erratically, their colors bleeding into one another like a fever dream. Somewhere in the distance, the cursed laughter echoed mocking, relentless, impossible to escape. It wrapped around me like a vice, tightening with every beat of my heart. Images began to flicker in the glass, not reflections, but memories fractured and fragmented, like shards of a broken mirror. At first, they were vague, a whispered conversation in a dimly lit room, the cold touch of betrayal beneath a pallid moon. Then, sharper, more painful, the faces of those I had wronged, their eyes accusing and hollow. I recoiled, my breath catching in my throat. "No," I whispered, desperate to turn away, but the carnival would not be denied. The Ferris wheel's slow ascent carried me higher, and with it, the sins I had buried deeper than memory clawed their way to the surface. From the darkened edge of the carnival, a shape emerged, the laughing clown, its grotesque grin stretched impossibly wide, teeth gleaming like shards of broken glass. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine, and a chilling laughter spilled from its cracked lips, weaving through the air like a sinister melody. "You can't hide," it hissed, voice dripping with malice. "Not here, not now." My hands clenched into fists, nails biting into my palms. I wanted to scream, to run, to erase the memories that threatened to drown me. But the clown's laughter echoed louder, filling every corner of the gondola, seeping into my bones. It was the sound of judgment, of punishment manifest. As the Ferris wheel creaked at the apex of its rotation, a figure appeared beyond the carnival's twisted tense mirror. Her silver hair shimmered like moonlight through the hazy gloom. Her pale face was calm, expression unreadable but for a faint sadness in her eyes. "You must face it," she said softly, voice barely rising above the laughter. "Only through acceptance can you find the path." I wanted to believe her, to grasp at the fragile hope she offered. But the weight of my guilt was a crushing stone, and the carnival's horrors pressed in from all sides. Below, the shadow children gathered, their ghostly forms swirling like fog. They whispered in voices that were not voices, naming sins long forgotten yet never truly erased. The gondola began its descent, the world warping around me. I was caught between two worlds, one of nightmare and one of reality, each indistinguishable from the other. The carnival was not just a place, it was a reflection of my soul's torment. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, the laughter fading to a distant echo, replaced by the pounding of my own heart. Denial was no longer an option. The sins I carried were mine to face, and the Ferris wheel's rotation was the turning point. As the ride slowed, the carnival's grotesque lights flickered once more. The next revelation awaited, a deeper wound yet to be uncovered. But for the first time, a flicker of resolve stirred within me, a fragile ember amid the darkness. The carnival was not finished with me, neither was I finished with it. And so the wheel turned again, carrying me toward the unbearable truth. The sun had long since disappeared behind the horizon, leaving only the garish glow of carnival lights to illuminate the night. The Ferris wheel's gondola swayed gently, suspended between heaven and hell. I traced the condensation on the glass with a trembling finger, watching as the images within shifted and morphed. Each fragment of memory was a puzzle piece, jagged and stained with regret. Faces I had tried to forget leered back at me, friends betrayed, promises broken, moments of cowardice and cruelty. The carnival turned these sins into grotesque spectacles, a carousel with horses bearing the faces of those I had harmed, their eyes hollow and accusing. A hall of mirrors reflecting distorted versions of myself, each more monstrous than the last. The laughing clown's presence was constant, a malignant force that thrived on my fear. It appeared suddenly, materializing from the shadows with a twisted grin. Its footsteps echoed on the rusted metal beneath the gondola, and its laughter rang out, sharp and unyielding. "Face yourself," it taunted, "or be lost forever." I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to look away. But Myra's words echoed in my mind. Acceptance was the key. The clown's laughter was a curse, yes, but also a call to reckoning. Outside, the carnival buzzed with a sinister energy. The carnival barker's voice boomed across the grounds, announcing new horrors with gleeful cruelty. The shadow children drifted silently, their presence a reminder that no sin could truly be forgotten. As the Ferris wheel creaked once more, I felt the weight of my past pressing down on me, suffocating and relentless. Yet beneath the suffocating dread, a seed of understanding took root. I was not merely a victim of this cursed carnival, I was its prisoner, bound by my own guilt. The gondola tilted as it passed the apex, and I braced myself for the next revelation. Whatever truth awaited, I knew I could not turn away. The carnival demanded confrontation, and I was running out of time. With a final breath, I opened my eyes, ready to face the sin that would shatter my denial and force me into the abyss of self-acceptance. The ride was far from over. Night deepened as the Ferris wheel rotated, each turn peeling back a layer of my soul's darkness. The carnival's surreal horrors enveloped me, blending nightmare with waking reality until the two became indistinguishable. The cursed laughter was no longer just a sound. It was a presence, a living thing that clawed at my sanity. Through the glass, I glimpsed the twisted carnival below, booths manned by spectral figures, rides that twisted impossibly into the sky, and the ever-watchful eyes of the ringleader lurking just beyond the shadows. The carnival was a labyrinth of torment, and I was lost within its heart. The laughing clown appeared again, its grin wider than ever, eyes gleaming with malice. It danced around the gondola, its voice a chorus of mocking echoes. "You cannot hide from what you are," it whispered. "The truth will consume you." I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the torment, but the memories surged forward, unstoppable and merciless. I saw the moments when I chose selfishness over compassion, silence over truth. The faces of those I betrayed haunted me, their pain a mirror reflecting my own fractured soul. Then, as if summoned by my despair, Myra appeared once more at the carnival's edge. Her calm presence was a stark contrast to the chaos around me. "Acceptance," she urged gently. "Only through acceptance can the cycle be broken." Her words pierced the darkness, offering a fragile thread of hope. Yet the carnival was relentless, and the shadow children swirled closer, their ghostly whispers echoing forgotten sins that clawed at my mind. The gondola began its descent, the carnival lights blurring into streaks of color. With every rotation, the past and present collided, and I stood on the precipice of a truth I could no longer deny. The Ferris wheel turned, carrying me deeper into the heart of my own nightmare, toward the unbearable reckoning that would define my fate. And the cursed laughter never ceased. The air was thick with the scent of rusted metal and stale popcorn, mingled with something far fouler like decay and forgotten promises. The cacophony of cursed laughter seeped into my bones, a relentless soundtrack that twisted my insides with every echoing note. Ahead stood the funhouse, its entrance a yawning maw painted with peeling, sickly pastels. The sign, flickering unevenly, read, "Reflections of the Self." I hesitated, the hairs on my neck prickling as if warning me to turn back, but I had no choice. The carnival demanded my passage. Inside, the mirrors were anything but ordinary. Each surface warped and twisted my reflection into monstrous parodies' faces, twisted by rage, despair, and cruelty. The eyes staring back were not mine, but those of a stranger steeped in sin. Whispers slithered from the glass, accusing and mocking. "You lied. You betrayed. You fled." Each phrase was a dagger, cutting through the fragile veil of denial I clung to. My past slithered from shadows into sharp relief, memories flooding like a relentless tide. From there, the carnival's twisted logic led me to the dart-throwing game, a cruel parody of childhood innocence. The targets were familiar faces, those I had wronged, their eyes wide with hurt and betrayal. I threw blindly, each miss a reminder of my failures. The darts that struck seemed to pierce my own heart. Laughter, low and hollow, bubbled around me. The laughing clown appeared suddenly, emerging from the shadows like a specter of torment. Its painted grin stretched impossibly wide, eyes empty yet burning with a cruel light. It circled me, taunting with silent mirth, its presence a physical weight pressing against my chest. I stumbled away, heart pounding, into the carousel's slow, eerie spin. The horses were no longer whimsical creatures, but grotesque tableaux of my Sincidines, frozen in time, vivid and unyielding. A horse reared, its mane transforming into writhing shadows that whispered of broken promises and shattered trust. With every step, the carnival stripped away my defenses, peeling back layers of guilt and shame. The cursed laughter crescendoed, a tidal wave of mockery and despair that threatened to drown me. Yet amid the horror, a flicker of something else stirred within, a desperate, fragile hope that perhaps, beyond the torment, lay a path to redemption. The carnival was no mere place. It was a mirror of my own soul, warped and cracked, but still reflecting truths I could no longer deny. As the rides spun their nightmarish tales around me, I understood that the only escape lay not in fleeing, but in facing the darkness head-on, even if it meant breaking apart to be made whole again. And so I moved forward, drawn by the cursed laughter, compelled by the promise that the final ride on the Ferris wheel might yet offer release or eternal damnation. A hand brushed my shoulder. I turned sharply, but no one was there. The laughter swelled, echoing in my ears as the carnival's nightmare deepened around me. The journey was far from over, and the rides had only just begun to reveal their horrors. I swallowed hard, steeling myself for what was to come. The carnival's macabre attractions were not just punishments, they were revelations. And I was trapped in their merciless grasp. Mira sat cross-legged on a faded patchwork quilt, her silver hair shimmering faintly in the dim lantern light that swayed gently above. The soft glow threw delicate shadows across her pale face, etching lines of quiet endurance and sorrow. I hesitated at the entrance, the cursed laughter still echoing faintly behind me like a distant storm. But something in her serene presence beckoned me forward. "Sit," she said, voice soft but steady, a balm against the relentless cacophony outside. I obeyed, sinking onto the worn fabric, the rough texture grounding me amid the swirl of my racing thoughts. Mira's eyes met mine clear, deep pools of calm that seemed to hold untold stories. "You're searching for a way out," she whispered, as if sharing a secret meant only for me. "But you must understand what you're up against." I swallowed hard, the weight of my sins pressing down, the cursed laughter threatening to surge back. Is there truly a way? Or are we all doomed to this endless torment? Myra's gaze didn't waver. I was once like you, lost, drowning in regret and fear. But I found a sliver of peace, not here, but in acceptance. The carnival is a prison, yes, but it's also a mirror. What you see around you is the reflection of what you carry inside. Her words stirred something fragile within me, a flicker of hope I had thought extinguished long ago. "How did you find peace?" She smiled faintly, the corners of her lips trembling with the memory. "By facing what I'd hidden away, by allowing myself to feel the full weight of my guilt without turning away. It wasn't easy. The carnival fights you every step, twisting your fears and doubts. But once you stop running, the path starts to clear, just a little." I looked around the tent, the shadows seeming less oppressive here. Outside, the twisted forms of carnival rides loomed, grotesque silhouettes against the night sky. The distant echo of the laughing clown's manic cackle cut through the quiet like a blade, a harsh reminder that this place was no sanctuary. "The laughter never truly stops," Mira admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's the soundtrack of guilt, the echo of all the pain we've caused. But it doesn't have to be your master. It can be a warning, a call to reckon." I swallowed, the words settling deep. And what if I can't forgive myself? What if the sins are too great? Mira reached out, her pale hand trembling slightly as she touched mine. The contact was cold but grounding, a lifeline in the storm. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing, it's about seeing yourself clearly, accepting the darkness and the light. It's the first step toward breaking the cycle. Her eyes searched mine, hopeful yet cautious. "You don't have to walk this path alone. I'm here with you, even if only for a while." The carnival's grotesque laughter faded to a low murmur, the shadows at the edges of the tent seeming to recede. For the first time since arriving, I felt a crack in the suffocating grip of despair. "Thank you," I whispered, voice raw. "I want to try." Mira nodded, a serene strength settling over her features. Then the journey begins. But beware, the carnival will not give up its prisoners without a fight. Outside, the night pulsed with eerie energy. The twisted rides beckoned, and somewhere nearby, the laughing clown's deranged laughter rose again, sharper and more menacing. Yet inside the tent, amidst the flickering lantern light and Myra's calm presence, I found a fragile spark of hope, a small, precious flame against the encroaching darkness. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and pain, but for the first time, I felt the stirrings of resolve. The carnival's nightmare was far from over, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way through the darkness. As I rose to leave, Myra's final words lingered in my mind, a quiet chant against the silence. Face the laughter. Face yourself. Only then can the chains begin to fall away. I stepped out of the tent, the carnival's twisted horrors awaiting, but now armed with a glimmer of understanding and a fragile hope that maybe redemption was not just a cruel illusion. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, its creaking spokes turning slowly, each rotation a promise of reckoning. And I was ready, or at least I hoped I was. The laughter echoed once more, cursed and chilling, but this time it felt less like a sentence and more like a challenge. The night stretched before me, dark and endless, but I would not turn away. Not now, not ever. The carnival was still watching, still waiting, and so was I. The lights flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced and twisted, mirroring the chaos roiling within me. Then, from the fractured glass of a shattered funhouse mirror, a figure emerged, impossibly distorted, its silhouette jagged and warped. The laughing clown stepped into view, its face a macabre canvas of exaggerated painted features, the grin impossibly wide, stretching beyond the limits of human expression, and its hollow eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. A cold shiver darted down my spine as the first notes of that manic laughter slithered through the air, sharp and persistent, slicing through the carnival's oppressive silence. It was a sound that clawed into my mind, unrelenting and mocking, a cruel reminder that my torment was far from over. I froze, heart hammering in my chest, breath hitching as the clown's laughter ebbed and surged like a living thing, wrapping around me, suffocating and inescapable. The carnival around me seemed to warp and pulse with the sound. Tents sagged with grotesque deformity, their canvas skin stretched tight like the taut nerves in my own body. The rides, once gleaming with childish promise, twisted into nightmare incarnate. The carousels, once bright horses, now bore snarling, fang-filled mouths, their eyes wild with madness. The carnival's melody, a warped and dissonant tune, filled the air with a sickly sweetness that made my stomach churn. I stumbled toward the carousel, seeking some anchor amid the madness. Beneath the rusted canopy, the faint glow of dying bulbs illuminated the clown's figure as it darted in and out of the shadows, its laughter erupting in sharp bursts. Each appearance was accompanied by a new taunt, whispered and shouted, each syllable a barbed accusation against my soul. It embodied every fear I had tried to bury, the betrayal I had inflicted, the promises broken, the faces I had turned away from in my darkest hours. "You can't run," it chortled, voice a grotesque blend of childlike glee and venomous spite. "You belong here, with the others lost, forgotten, damned." The words were both a curse and a truth I could no longer deny. I felt the walls close in, the carnival's twisted architecture mirroring the labyrinth of my own conscience. The laughter pierced deeper now, a relentless tide washing away the fragile defenses I had built. Memories surfaced unbidden, faces contorted in pain, whispered apologies that never reached their intended ears, the cold weight of my own failings pressing down like an iron shroud. Desperation clawed at me, a primal urge to flee from the madness that threatened to consume me whole. But the clown was always there, just beyond reach, a mocking spectre that shattered every fleeting hope of escape. It lunged forward suddenly, graceless and jerking, its grotesque grin widening into something monstrous. I stumbled back, heart pounding in frantic rhythm with the cursed laughter that echoed relentlessly around me. In that moment, I understood this torment was not merely punishment, it was a mirror, a reflection of the guilt that festered within. The laughing clown was the embodiment of my own self-loathing, twisted into a creature that would never rest until I faced the truth I had long denied. And so the carnival spun on, its nightmare clutching me tighter with every breath, every echoing laugh. The path ahead was unclear, shadowed in despair and fear. But I knew one thing with brutal certainty: the torment would only escalate, and I must find a way to endure or be consumed entirely. The cursed laughter followed me as I moved deeper into the carnival's heart, a cruel soundtrack to a journey I could not abandon. Somewhere beyond the madness, perhaps, lay a glimmer of hope, or the final reckoning that awaited all who dared to ride the Ferris wheel of their own sins. And as the night deepened, the clown's laughter grew louder still, a maddening chorus that promised no respite, only the endless echo of guilt manifest. The next rotation was coming, and with it, the next revelation, but whether I would survive the ride, I could not yet say. As I stepped closer, the glass fractured my reflection into countless shards, each shard revealing a fragmented moment of my broken past. Faces I had tried to forget stared back at me, twisted in expressions of betrayal and sorrow. A sharp pang of recognition stabbed my heart as a memory surfaced once again. The cruel truth of my failings clawed its way to the surface. The carnival around me seemed alive, breathing with a sinister pulse that grew stronger with every heartbeat. The cursed laughter, that unbearable, twisted mirth, floated on the air like a dark fog. It wrapped itself around me, a suffocating shroud that promised no respite. With a sudden chill, ghostly figures emerged from the shadows, the shadow children. They moved silently, their pale, featureless faces glowing faintly in the darkness, their hollow eyes locked onto me, reflecting the forgotten sins I had long buried beneath layers of denial. I could feel their gaze piercing through my defenses, exposing the raw vulnerability I fought so hard to conceal. The laughter twisted into a sinister crescendo as the laughing clown appeared from nowhere, a grotesque spectre of my deepest fears. His face was a nightmarish distortion of painted joy grinning, impossibly wide eyes, hollow and mocking. He circled me with unnerving agility, each step punctuated by a burst of manic laughter that echoed through the carnival's cursed air. His presence was a cruel reminder of my failures, an embodiment of the guilt I could no longer outrun. I tried to speak, to push back against the torment, but my voice was swallowed by the relentless cacophony of laughter. Around me, the carnival began to dissolve into a swirling mist, a maelstrom of memories and emotions blending into one another with dizzying speed. Shadows shifted and morphed into grotesque shapes, and the line between nightmare and reality blurred until I was no longer certain where one ended and the other began. Fractured visions assaulted my senses, whispered accusations from faces I had wronged, the bitter sting of betrayal, the cold weight of remorse. Each fragment seemed to claw deeper into my soul, unraveling the fragile threads of my sanity. In the midst of this chaos, a sudden, piercing silence fell, a momentary reprieve from the relentless torment. The Carnival's twisted visage faded into the background, replaced by the stark clarity of my own reflection. I saw not just a haunted figure caught in an endless loop of guilt, but a broken person grappling with the unbearable weight of their past. The shards of memory were pieces of a puzzle I had no choice but to assemble, no matter how painful the process. I reached out trembling hands toward the mirror, desperate to grasp the fragments of my identity before they slipped away into the mist. The laughter began anew, softer now, but no less cruel. It whispered promises of punishment, of reckoning, and of the impossible task ahead, to confront the sins I had buried and to find a way through the Carnival's nightmare. My breath caught as a distant voice echoed through the haze of faint, familiar warmth that hinted at a path beyond despair. It was Mira's voice, calm and enigmatic, a fragile beacon in the darkness. Her words offered no answers, only cryptic guidance that stirred a flicker of hope within me. The Carnival's horrors still loomed, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to face the fractured pieces of my past and seek the redemption I so desperately needed. But as the shadows lengthened and the cursed laughter swelled once more, I realized there was no turning back. The fragments of my broken past had shattered the illusion of escape. Now, trapped in this twisted realm, I would have to face the truth, no matter how harrowing, can confront the darkness within before the Carnival claimed me entirely. And so, with a heart heavy with dread and remorse, I stepped deeper into the Carnival's nightmarish embrace, ready to uncover the next fragment of my fractured soul. Flickering bulbs, strung haphazardly from the creaking rafters, cast fractured shadows that danced like restless phantoms. I stepped cautiously onto the sawdust-strewn floor, the familiar scent of burnt sugar mingling nauseatingly with the metallic temps of rust. The Carnival's cacophony, the twisted melodies of a broken calliope, the distant echo of cursed laughter, had momentarily been swallowed by an oppressive silence that draped over me like a funeral shroud. From the periphery, a figure emerged, tall, statuesque, yet somehow intangible. The ringleader. His presence was a dark pulse in the heart of the Carnival, an embodiment of all that was unyielding and merciless. The twisted carnival mask he wore was a grotesque mosaic of cracked porcelain and tarnished brass, its expression frozen in a macabre grin that seemed both mocking and sorrowful. Beneath the mask, faint embers glowed where his eyes should have been embers that pierced through the darkness and found my soul, laying it bare. So, his voice slithered through the silence, a chilling blend of mockery and solemnity. "You have come at last." I swallowed hard, the taste of dust and dread thick in my mouth. "Who are you?" I forced the words out, though I knew the answer before the question even left my lips. "I am the Reckoning," he replied, stepping forward with a measured grace that belied the menace in his tone. "I am the shadow cast by every sin you have tried to bury, the laughter that haunts your nightmares, the weight that drags you beneath the surface." His words were a litany of condemnation, each syllable a hammer striking the fragile defenses of my mind. Memories I had long suppressed surged unbidden, the faces I betrayed, the promises I shattered, the moments I chose cowardice over courage. The Carnival's cursed laughter fell silent, replaced by the heavy toll of judgment that filled the tent like thick smoke. I wanted to look away, to flee, but my eyes were fixed, riveted on the ringleader's mask. It was as though it could see past the skin, past the flesh, into the very marrow of my being. Every secret, every hidden fault, every flicker of weakness was illuminated in that unblinking gaze. "Why?" I whispered, voice trembling. "Why this? Why me?" "Because guilt demands its due," he intoned, and the carnival exists to collect the debts owed by souls like yours. A gust of cold wind swept through the tent, stirring dust motes and tattered carnival posters that fluttered like dying leaves. The ringleader stepped back into the shadows, his form dissolving into a swirl of dark mist that seemed to absorb the faint glow of the bulbs overhead. As he vanished, the cursed laughter returned, louder and more relentless than before, a cruel reminder that this was far from over. I was left alone, trembling, the weight of his judgment pressing down upon me. The carnival around me throbbed with sinister life, each creak and whisper a testament to the torment that awaited. Yet beneath the dread, a stubborn ember of resolve flickered. If the ringleader was the shadow of my guilt, then perhaps confronting him was the first step toward casting it off. But the question remained: how could I reconcile with the inescapable judgment he embodied? How could I face the truths he revealed without being consumed? The carnival's nightmare stretched endless before me, and the only certainty was that the next rotation of the Ferris wheel would bring me closer to the unbearable reckoning I had long feared. As I turned away from the fading shadows, the cursed laughter echoed once more, a maddening chorus that promised no respite. Yet in that haunting sound, I found a perverse clarity was not just the laughter of punishment, but the call to confront the darkness within. And so, with trembling steps and a heart heavy with remorse, I prepared to face whatever lay ahead. As the Ferris wheel groaned beneath the weight of its own ancient bones, I found myself once again trapped in the small cabin, the world outside reduced to flickering shadows and the sickly glow of carnival lights. The cursed laughter echoed relentlessly, a twisted symphony that gnawed at the edges of my mind. The wheel creaked ominously as it began its slow, torturous rotation. Outside the grimy window, the carnival's grotesque silhouette shifted and warped, as if breathing with a sinister life of its own. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, the surface trembling beneath my touch, and braced myself for the visions that were already clawing their way to the surface of my consciousness. The first revelation came swiftly, like a blade sliding beneath my skin. A scene unfolded in the darkness, beyond the glass of fractured memory, jagged and incomplete. I saw myself standing at a crossroads, the faces of those I had betrayed flickering in the shadows. Their eyes bore into me, accusing and unyielding. The carnival lights glimmered cruelly, casting their twisted reflections across the shattered fragments of my past. A harsh guttural laughter erupted behind me, and I spun around to confront the source. The laughing clown was there, emerging from the depths of the carnival's nightmare with a grotesque grin stretched impossibly wide. His hollow eyes bore into mine as his mocking cackle filled the cabin, each note a dagger twisting deeper into my psyche. I recoiled, but the cabin was too small, the nightmare too vast. The wheel jolted, and the cabin shuddered as it crested the apex of its arc. Outside the funhouse loomed, a warped beast of mirrors and madness. In its glassy depths, my reflection fractured into 1,000 distorted faces, each one a mask of shame and regret. They jeered silently, their twisted mouths forming words I dared not hear. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, willing the visions to stop, but they only deepened. The laughter grew louder, a cacophony of cursed mirth that seemed to seep into my bones. The carnival's heartbeat quickened, and from the shadows at the midway's edge, the ringleader emerged. His twisted mask caught the dim light, eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly fire. He moved with a predatory grace, his presence a chilling reminder that judgment was inescapable. He did not speak, but his gaze was a sentence damning and absolute. I felt the weight of countless sins pressing down, each one a stone in the burden I carried. The cursed laughter swelled to a maddening roar, drowning out reason and hope alike. As the wheel turned again, the revelation deepened, peeling back another layer of my moral decay. Memories collided with nightmare. Faces I had hurt merged with the carnival's twisted forms. The boundaries between reality and hallucination blurred until I could no longer tell where I ended and the torment began. I fought to hold onto the fragile threads of my sanity, clutching at the fleeting hope that redemption might yet be possible. But with each turn of the Ferris wheel, the cursed laughter grew louder, more insistent. It was a relentless tide, threatening to sweep me away into the abyss of despair. The carnival was alive with my sins, each ride a grotesque crucible of punishment. The Ferris wheel was the heart of it all, turning me inexorably toward a reckoning I could neither avoid nor escape. The night stretched on, endless and suffocating, and I realized the only way off was to face the darkness within. As the cabin creaked and swayed once more, I steeled myself for the revelations yet to come. The cursed laughter echoed in my ears, a chilling reminder that this was far from over. Somewhere in the shadows, the ringleader waited, his judgment as inevitable as the turning of the Ferris wheel itself. I closed my eyes, swallowed the bile of fear and remorse, and prepared to confront the sins that had brought me here. The carnival's nightmare was mine, and mine alone to endure. The wheel would turn again, and with it, the next piece of my shattered soul would be revealed. As I stumbled through the twisted pathways, lined with flickering lights and warped carnival tents, a figure emerged from the shadows, a pale woman with silver hair that shimmered under the jaundiced glow of the carnival's faltering bulbs. She stood beside a carousel, its horses frozen mid-gallop, their chipped paint and cracked eyes reflecting the decay that permeated this place. Her presence was a fragile island amid the chaos, and something about her calm steadiness pulled me from the depths of my spiraling despair. "You're still here," she said softly, her voice threading through the thrum of distant laughter and music like a beacon. "I don't know if I'll ever leave," I admitted, my voice hoarse, raw from the endless torment. She nodded knowingly. "Most don't, but there's a whiff, you're willing to see it." Her words, though cryptic, planted a seed in the barren soil of my hopelessness. I found myself drawn closer, compelled to understand the faint glimmer she represented. "Who are you?" I asked, needing something tangible amid the surreal nightmare. "Call me Myra," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "I've been where you are, caught in this endless loop, but I found a measure of peace, not freedom, perhaps, but peace enough to endure." I looked at her, searching for signs of madness or deceit, but found only sincerity. "How?" "By facing what we hide," Myra said, gesturing toward the carousel horses. "Their broken forms a metaphor for fractured souls. The carnival thrives on denial and fear. The cursed laughter feeds on your resistance. To escape, you must embrace your guilt not as a punishment, but as a truth that can be accepted and, eventually, forgiven." Her words were both a bomb and a blade, cutting through layers of shame and pain I had long buried. I wanted to believe her, but the laughter swelled suddenly, a cruel tide that threatened to sweep me away into madness. "It's hard," she acknowledged, stepping closer, her presence steadying me. "I won't lie to you. The path is brutal, but it's the only one out." For the first time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't known in what felt like an eternity: hope. Not the naive hope of escape without consequence, but a fragile hope forged in the fires of acceptance. "You don't have to do this alone," Myra said quietly. "I'll be here as long as you need." Her offer was a lifeline, a tether to something human amidst the carnival's monstrous embrace. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Where do I start?" "Look inside," she said simply. "The rides will show you. But this time, don't turn away. Don't run. Face it." The cursed laughter faded to a distant echo, replaced by the steady beat of my own heart, pounding with tentative resolve. As Myra's figure blurred into the shadows, the carnival's horrors loomed. But now I carried something new, a glimmer of hope, fragile but undeniable. Steeling myself, I turned toward the next ride, ready to confront the sins I had long denied. The road ahead was dark and unforgiving, but for the first time, I believed I might find a way through the endless torment. And somewhere deep within, beneath the layers of fear and shame, a whisper of redemption began to stir. The cursed laughter that had haunted every corner was conspicuously absent here, replaced by a silence so profound it pressed against my eardrums, threatening to burst them from within. It was in this unnatural quiet that they appeared, the shadow children. At first I thought my eyes betrayed me. Ghostly figures began to seep from the darkness, pale and indistinct, their forms wavering like smoke caught in a cold draught. They stood still, scattered across the path, like forgotten memories come to life. Their faces were blurred, as if smeared by time itself, but their eyes empty voids pierced through to my very soul. I felt their gaze, a weight heavier than any physical burden, anchoring me to this cursed place. I tried to move past them, but the closer I got, the more their presence grew oppressive. Their silence was deafening, and in it I sensed 1,000 unspoken accusations, the residue of sins buried so deep they had nearly slipped from my consciousness. My heart hammered against my ribcage, a frantic drumbeat echoing the terror swelling inside me. Was this what my guilt looked like? Not the cruel laughter or the twisted rides, but these silent watchers, these children of shadow. One stepped forward, its form flickering uncertainly, like a candle struggling against the wind. Its hand extended toward me, fingers trembling as if hesitant to touch. I recoiled, but the moment our eyes met, I saw reflected back the fractured shards of my own shame and fear. Memories I had fought so hard to bury surged forth in a chaotic tide, faces I had betrayed, promises I had broken, moments when I had chosen cowardice over courage. The weight of it all crushed me, and I sank to my knees, gasping for breath in the cold night air. "You cannot run from what you have forgotten," a voice whispered beside me, calm and steady. I turned to see Myra, her silver hair glowing faintly under the sickly carnival lights. She knelt down, her pale eyes filled with a compassion that seemed almost alien in this place of torment. "They are the pieces of you," she said softly, gesturing to the shadow children. "The parts you left behind in the shadows. They watch because they remember. To forget is to lose yourself entirely." I wanted to scream at her, to deny this terrible truth. But as I looked once more at those hollow eyes, I understood the depth of my predicament. These specters were not mere phantoms. They were the fragments of my identity, the cost of my sins made manifest. To ignore them was to condemn myself to oblivion. Mira's presence was a fragile lifeline, a whisper of hope amid the overwhelming desolation. She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "You must face them," she urged. "Only by remembering can you begin to heal." The shadow children closed in, their silent vigil unyielding. The carnival around us seemed to fade, the grotesque colors draining into a monochrome haze. The cursed laughter was gone, but in its place was a silence that screamed louder than any torment. I felt myself unraveling, the line between who I was and who I had become blurring into an indistinguishable haze. The faces of those I had wronged flickered before me, mingling with the spectral children. I was caught in a tempest of memory and remorse, teetering on the edge of madness. Yet within that chaos, Mira's steady grip anchored me. "You are not alone," she said. "Remember, and you take the first step toward reclaiming yourself." With trembling hands, I reached toward the nearest shadow child, willing myself to confront the silent witness to my past. The chill of its presence seeped into my bones, but beneath the cold was a strange warmth, a promise that in facing these shadows, I might find a way back from the abyss. The carnival's nightmare was far from over, but amidst the haunting silence of the shadow children, a fragile flicker of resolve kindled within me. I would have to survive this ordeal, piece by broken piece, or be lost forever to the cursed laughter that awaited beyond. And so I stood, surrounded by the silent watchers, poised on the trembling precipice of memory and madness, knowing that the path forward demanded I embrace the very shadows I had long feared. The once familiar rides, now contorted and warped beyond recognition, twisted into monstrous parodies of their former selves. The carousel's painted horses stretched and melted, their eyes leaking ink-black tears that dripped onto the cracked pavement. Above, the Ferris wheel groaned ominously, its gondolas bending and twisting like the limbs of some colossal, slumbering beast awakening from a nightmare. A sickly green mist coiled through the air, thick with the acrid scent of burnt sugar and rusted metal. The carnival music, once jovial and inviting, had become a dissonant cacophony of warped melodies and disjointed rhythms. It slithered through the air, entwined with the cursed laughter that echoed relentlessly, a sound both infectious and horrific. Each peal of that laughter clawed at the narrator's mind, fraying the edges of sanity with cruel precision. I staggered forward, each step unsteady, as if the ground beneath me had turned to treacle. The world around me blurred and shifted. Walls breathed, shadows stretched and writhed, reaching for me with gnarled fingers. My breath came in ragged gasps, heart pounding in a frantic rhythm that matched the frenzied pulse of the carnival's twisted heart. Suddenly, from the swirling chaos, emerged the laughing clown. Its distorted visage leaped into my vision with terrifying immediacy, an exaggerated grin stretched impossibly wide, hollow eyes gleaming with malevolence beneath a cracked and peeling mask. The clown's presence was a vortex of dread, its laughter a sharp blade slicing through the thickening fog of my thoughts. "You can't hide," it sneered, voice dripping with venomous mockery. "The sins you bury feed me. The more you run, the louder I laugh." Its laughter erupted again, a manic crescendo that reverberated through the carnival grounds, bending reality itself. Around me, shadows leaped from the darkness, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes that danced in time with the cursed laughter. I turned blindly, desperate to escape, but the carnival stretched infinitely in all directions, a labyrinth of horror with no exit. From the periphery of my vision, ghostly figures emerge, the shadow children. They drifted silently, their translucent forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. Their empty eyes held no malice, only a cold, haunting loneliness. They represented forgotten sins, memories I had long tried to suppress, now rising to the surface with spectral clarity. Their silence weighed heavily, a stark contrast to the raucous laughter that threatened to drown me. I felt their gaze bore into my soul, forcing me to confront the fragments of my past I had desperately tried to forget. Each shadowed child was a shard of memory, a broken promise, a betrayal I had buried deep. The carnival barker's booming voice cut through the chaos, his taunting call echoing from unseen speakers. "Step right up, face your fears, or be consumed by them." I found myself drawn inexorably toward the Ferris wheel once more. Its grotesque gondolas twisted into nightmarish visages, faces contorted in eternal screams and silent weeping. As the wheel began to turn, the cursed laughter escalated into a deafening roar that filled the sky and rattled my very bones. The world around me turned to liquid nightmare, colors bleeding into one another as the boundary between reality and madness dissolved. I clung desperately to the fragile threads of my sanity, but with each rotation, the weight of my guilt pressed harder, the laughter more relentless. A scream tore from my throat, raw and desperate, mingling with the cursed laughter that would not cease. I was drowning in the carnival's madness, a prisoner trapped in a twisted reflection of my own broken soul. The descent into madness was complete, and I feared what horrors awaited me next. As the Ferris wheel turned, the carnival's sinister pulse quickened, and I knew the nightmare was far from over. Somewhere in the shadows, the laughing clown's grin widened. The cursed laughter was not just a sound, it was a sentence, a reminder that my torment had only just begun. The night stretched endlessly ahead, a dark spiral pulling me further into the abyss. And in that abyss, my own fractured mind awaited the next cruel revelation. Her silver hair caught the pale light in a manner that made her seem almost ethereal, an apparition caught between this world and the next. We reached a worn bench beneath a flickering string of lights, their inconsistent pulse echoing the unsteady beat of my heart. Mira settled onto the bench with a grace that belied the weight she carried. Her eyes, calm pools of muted sorrow, met mine without hesitation. "I suppose you want to know why I stay," she said softly, her voice a gentle murmur against the distant hum of cursed laughter that had become the carnival's heartbeat. I nodded, words failing me, my throat too tight to speak. "Long ago," she began, "I was much like you, haunted, terrified, trying to outrun the shadows of my past. This carnival, it's a prison of guilt, but also a mirror. It reflects who we are, what we've done, and what we refuse to accept." Her gaze drifted to the flickering lights above. "I learned something here, something bitter yet necessary. You see, I found a sort of peace not because I was free, but because I stopped running. I started to accept the guilt gnawing at my soul, though only partially. That acceptance, incomplete as it was, silenced the relentless laughter for moments enough to catch my breath." Her words settled in the air, heavy and fragile. I swallowed hard, the knot of denial tightening within me. "Partial acceptance," I echoed, the concept alien and yet achingly close. Myra nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. "It's not a cure, not a salvation. It's a pause, a breath between storms. It doesn't erase the past but begins to dull its sharpest edges." For me, it meant the difference between being consumed and surviving. The carnival's cursed laughter waned, as if respecting the gravity of her confession, leaving behind a hollow silence that pressed against my ears. I felt the oppressive weight of my own guilt stir uneasily, like a beast awakened but restrained. "But why only partial?" I asked, desperate to understand the limits of such peace. Myra's eyes darkened, because full acceptance is terrifying. To face every sin, every betrayal, every failure without flinching, that demands a strength most don't have. I couldn't do it then, maybe not ever. But even this fragment of acceptance changed everything. A sudden gust swept through the carnival, causing tattered banners to snap and flutter wildly above us. The chaotic movement echoed the unrest still swirling within her words. The carnival seemed to pulse with a life of its own, its grotesque attractions looming like sentinels of judgment. I looked at Mira, my voice barely a whisper. "Do you think I can find that peace? She reached out, her hand cold but steady, resting lightly over mine. The touch was a lifeline, fragile but real. "It's possible," she said, "but it starts with truth, with no more running." Her presence was a beacon amid the suffocating darkness, a fragile hope that flickered stubbornly against the shadows. I wanted to believe her, to grasp that sliver of peace she described. Yet the cursed laughter, now distant but never gone, reminded me that the road ahead was treacherous. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," I admitted, the admission a crack in my own armor. "Strength isn't the absence of fear," Mira replied, "but the will to face it." As the carnival breathed around us, its grotesque horrors momentarily held at bay by this quiet exchange, I felt the first stirrings of defiance against the endless torment. Perhaps, just perhaps, the nightmare could be challenged not by fleeing or denying, but by facing the darkness within. A distant call from the carnival barker shattered the fragile silence, drawing me back to the relentless procession of sins yet to be confronted. Mira squeezed my hand once more before slipping away into the shadows, leaving me alone with the weight of her words. The path forward was uncertain, shrouded in doubt and dread. Yet, amidst it all, a single truth flickered. Partial peace was not salvation, but it was a beginning. And for the first time since my arrival, I dared to hope. The cursed laughter echoed once more, but now it sounded different, less mocking, more like a challenge. The carnival had not relented, but neither had I. The wheel was turning again, and with it, my reckoning. "I will face it," I whispered into the night. "I will not run anymore." The carnival awaited, its twisted maze of horrors, ready to peel back the layers of my soul. But for now, I carried with me a fragile light, a glimpse of Myra's partial peace and the faint promise that I might yet find my own. Every step echoed hollowly beneath the flickering lights that painted the world in sickly hues of decay and despair. Then, as if summoned by my faltering resolve, the laughing clown appeared not as a mere spectre this time, but a living nightmare incarnate. Its grotesque face stretched unnaturally wide into a smile that mocked the very concept of joy loomed out of the shadows. The hollow eyes' black pits, devoid of mercy, pierced my soul, drilling deep into the marrow of my guilt. A laughter erupted, harsh and jagged, slicing through the night air like shards of broken glass. It was a sound that curled cold fingers around my heart, squeezing until the breath caught and the world tilted. I staggered backward, the laughter chasing me as the carnival itself seemed to pulse with malevolent life. The twisted tents leaned closer, their canvas walls whispering secrets of sins long buried. Reflections in cracked mirrors fractured into distorted versions of myself, each one a grotesque caricature, accusing, condemning. The cursed laughter grew louder, swelling into a chorus of torment that threatened to drown my very being. Just as despair clawed at my throat, a sudden calmness brushed the chaos aside. Myra's pale figure materialized beside me, her silver hair shimmering faintly under the jaundiced glow. Her voice, soft yet resolute, cut through the madness. "You do not have to carry this alone," she said, eyes steady despite the carnage surrounding us. Her presence was a fragile lifeline, a flicker of hope amidst the relentless storm. I reached out, trembling, grasping at the comfort she offered. But the laughing clown was not finished. It lunged forward with a maniacal grin, its laughter twisting into a scream that echoed within my skull. The carnival around us convulsed, the hall of mirrors shattered and reformed, each shard reflecting a memory I had tried to forget. Faces from my past leered and jeered, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of blame and regret. The laughter was no longer just sound. It was a living force, stalking me through every shadowed corner. I felt my resolve falter, the crushing weight of guilt threatening to consume me whole. Yet, within that abyss, Myra's steady hand anchored me. "Face it," she whispered, "or be lost forever." The choice hung before me, sharp and unforgiving. Surrender to the torment and dissolve into oblivion, or muster the fractured pieces of myself to fight back. My breath hitched, a tremor of defiance stirring beneath the layers of fear. I clenched my fists, the cursed laughter still ringing in my ears, but now met with a flicker of resistance. This was no longer just punishment. It was a crucible, and I had to decide whether to be forged anew or broken beyond repair. As the carnival's twisted shadows writhed around us, the night held its breath. The final act of torment had begun, and with it, the fragile hope that redemption might yet be within reach. The laughing clown's grin widened, a sinister promise that this was far from over. But so was my fight, and as the echo of cursed laughter faded into a low, haunting murmur, I knew the path ahead would demand everything I had done more. The carnival whispered its dreadful invitation once again, a challenge laid bare, surrender or defy. Which would I choose? The answer would shape the fate of my soul. I stood frozen, my breath shallow and uneven, every nerve screaming in protest as the shadows beneath the towering wheel coalesced into a form both dreadful and mesmerizing. From the murk emerged the ringleader, tall and imposing, his presence swallowing the faint flickers of carnival light like a black hole. His twisted carnival mask caught the sickly glow, the grotesque smile carved into it a mockery of joy, while his faintly glowing eyes bore into me with merciless scrutiny. Silence fell, a silence so complete it felt like the world itself held its breath. Then, in a voice that was both calm and chilling, the ringleader spoke. His words were measured, deliberate, each syllable a hammer striking the fragile walls of my denial. "You have come far, but your journey is not yet complete. The sins you carry are not shadows to be ignored, but chains that bind you here." My heart pounded like a frantic drum, each beat a summons to face the abyss within. Flashes of grotesque carnival horrors danced behind my eyelids, twisted rides that screamed with the voices of the damned, distorted mirrors reflecting faces warped by guilt. The cursed laughter, the ever-present spectre, swelled to a crescendo, echoing inside my skull with maddening insistence. From the swirling darkness at the edge of my vision, Myra appeared. She was as ethereal as ever-pale skin like moonlight, silver hair flowing like liquid mercury, dressed in the faded garb of the carnival's forgotten past. Her eyes held a calmness that contrasted starkly with the storm raging inside me. She whispered, barely audible, "Face it. Only acceptance can break the cycle." The ringleader's gaze never wavered. "You have hidden from yourself for too long. Now you must confront the truth or be consumed." Before I could respond, a manic burst of laughter shattered the moment. The laughing clown erupted into view, its distorted face a nightmare made flesh, grinning wide with hollow, soulless eyes that pierced through my trembling form. It circled us like a vulture, its cursed laughter weaving through the air, relentless and merciless. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. Denial, once my refuge, crumbled under the ringleader's unyielding gaze and the clown's mocking jeers. I was caught between the abyss and the fragile hope Myra offered. Could I bear the unbearable? Could I relinquish the lies I told myself and embrace the crushing truth? "Tell me," the ringleader demanded, voice sharp as broken glass. "Will you run forever, or will you stand and be judged?" My voice was barely a whisper, trembling yet resolute. "I will face it." In that instant, the carnival seemed to shudder, the cursed laughter faltering as the first rays of acceptance pierced the darkness. But the journey was far from over. The ringleader's judgment was not mercy, it was a reckoning, a crucible where my soul would be forged or broken. As the Ferris wheel groaned into motion once more, I braced myself. The night was far from over, and the shadows of my sins awaited with hungry patience. Yet for the first time, I felt a flicker of something unexpected: hope. The cursed laughter faded into a haunting echo, but its promise remained. Redemption was a path through suffering, and I had taken the first step. But would it be enough? The Carnival's nightmare was relentless, and its final judgment loomed near. The question hung heavy in the air: could I truly escape? Or was I destined to ride the Ferris wheel forever, haunted by the laughter that never dies? The answer lay just beyond the next turn, and I had no choice but to meet it head-on. Below, the Carnival sprawled like a grotesque diorama, tents bulging and leaning at impossible angles, colors bleeding into one another like spilled blood. The sky above was a sickly green, unnatural, as if the world itself was twisted, reflecting the rot inside my own soul. A laughter began to grow around me, low at first, a sinister murmur curling through the night. It was the cursed laughter, the cruel soundtrack of this hellish place. Its timbre was mocking, layered with screams and sobs that seemed to rise from some deep, unnameable well of suffering. I pressed my hands against the cold metal of the gondola, knuckles white, eyes scanning the Carnival below where shadows writhed and danced in impossible rhythms. The mirrors inside the gondola flickered, their surfaces rippling like disturbed water. Suddenly, the reflections fractured, shards of glass multiplying and twisting until they became a kaleidoscope of memories. Faces appeared, faces I had betrayed, faces twisted in pain and accusation. Their eyes bore into me, silent witnesses to sins I had long tried to bury beneath layers of denial. The fractured reflections felt like shards lodging in my chest, each one a stab of remorse and fear. The air thickened, and from the shadows emerged the ringleader. His figure was tall and impossibly thin, draped in a tattered coat that seemed woven from the night itself. His carnival mask was a grotesque caricature, twisted into a permanent sneer, eyes glowing faintly beneath its surface. He stepped forward with a measured grace, voice low and sharp as broken glass. "You have run long enough," he intoned, each word a blade. "The truth you hide festers beneath your skin. It is time to see yourself as you truly are." I wanted to scream, to turn away, but the weight of his gaze pinned me in place. The gondola rocked gently, the Ferris wheel nearing completion of its full rotation. The cursed laughter swelled, now joined by the manic cackle of the laughing clown, who suddenly appeared at the edge of the gondola. Its face was a grotesque mask of distortion, grin stretched impossibly wide, eyes hollow but burning with cruel amusement. "Remember," the clown hissed, "there is no escape but through the truth." The laughter crescendoed, then abruptly ceased, leaving a suffocating silence that pressed against my eardrums. I was alone with my memories, my sins, and the unbearable weight of what I had done. Images flooded my mind, moments of betrayal so deep they shattered the fragile facade I had worn for years. Faces of those I had wronged, their pain a mirror to my own fractured soul. The realization was a blow that sent me reeling, the carnival around me blurring into a nightmare vision of my own making. The ringleader's voice cut through the tempest inside me once more. "Only by facing this can you hope to break the cycle. Will you accept the truth, or will you deny it until the laughter consumes you?" I felt the walls of my mind tremble. Fear and despair warred with a fragile spark of hope. To deny meant eternal torment. To accept meant unbearable reckoning. The Ferris wheel creaked again, the final descent looming, and with it, the choice that would define my fate. The carnival's cursed laughter echoed faintly as the gondola began its downward turn. The revelation of my darkest sin, a heavy shroud about my shoulders. As the carnival lights flickered and the shadows deepened, I realized that the path ahead was one of pain, but perhaps, just perhaps, also of redemption. And so, as the Ferris wheel turned, I braced myself to face the abyss within, knowing that beyond the pain lay either salvation or oblivion. The night was far from over, and the carnival's sinister game was only just beginning. Every step I took felt like sinking deeper into a mire of shadows and whispered accusations. The cursed laughter was no longer distant. It was inside my ears, clawing, gnashing, a relentless tide eroding my sanity. I stumbled through the maze of tents, their colors bleeding and warping under the flickering lights. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay, a metallic temps that clung to my throat and burned with every breath. Around me, the carnival twisted grotesquely. The carousel's horses jerked spasmodically, their hollow eyes bleeding shadows. A funnel of distorted mirrors reflected back not my face but fractured glimpses of every failure, every betrayal I'd tried so desperately to bury. The laughter surged, now a cacophony of mocking voices, each one echoing a sin too painful to name aloud. I fell to my knees, hands clutching at the dirt-streaked ground, fighting against the rising tide of despair. The cursed laughter was a living thing, a predator circling patiently, savoring my torment. It whispered cruel taunts, dredging up memories I'd fled for years, the faces I'd hurt, the promises I'd broken, the love I'd betrayed. Then, through the madness, a figure emerged, pale, serene, silver hair shimmering faintly even in the dim light. Myra. Her presence was inexplicably calming, a fragile lantern in the suffocating darkness. She did not speak, but her eyes held an unyielding compassion. She raised a hand, a silent invitation to stand and face the storm rather than flee. The laughing clown appeared then, stepping out from the shadows with a grin so wide it seemed to split its face in two. Its hollow eyes gleamed with cruel delight as it circled me, its laughter ringing out like a death knell. The sound was 1,000 knives scraping bone. It mocked every ounce of hope I had left. Come now, it seemed to say, there's nowhere to run. I wanted to scream, to bolt away into the endless dark beyond the carnival's reach. But the laughter was inside me now, inside my blood and bones, a relentless reminder that the sins I carried were not specters to evade, but truths to confront. I collapsed fully, my body trembling, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the grime and sweat. The cursed laughter twisted, warping into a mournful wail that echoed the breaking of my last defenses. In that terrible moment, I stood at a precipice, surrender to the endless torment, or gathered the shattered pieces of my soul and face what I had done. The carnival's nightmarish landscape pulsed around me, alive with judgment and despair. Yet beneath the crushing weight of punishment, a faint ember of something unspoken lingered, a possibility that perhaps this hell was not merely a prison, but a crucible for transformation. I clenched my fists, the dirt beneath my nails grounding me. The choice was mine. To run was to drown in cursed laughter forever. To stay was to walk through fire and confront the darkness within. And so, with ragged breath and haunted eyes, I rose. The breaking point was not an end, but a beginning, a threshold beyond which true reckoning awaited. The carnival seemed to hold its breath, the cursed laughter pausing for a heartbeat as if to acknowledge the shift. Somewhere, Mira's faint smile flickered, a fragile beacon in the encroaching night. I stepped forward, bearing the unbearable weight of my sins, ready to face the reckoning that would decide my fate. But even as I moved, the echoes of laughter whispered behind me, a reminder that the road ahead would be long, and the carnival's grip unyielding. Yet, amid this relentless storm of torment, a sudden stillness enveloped the space before me. It was as if time itself had hesitated. There she stood, Myra. Her pale figure emerged from the shadows, silver hair shimmering faintly in the flickering light of a nearby lantern. Her eyes, calm and steady, held no trace of the horrors that haunted this place. Instead, they reflected a quiet understanding, a fragile beacon of solace against the carnivalesque nightmare. I stumbled toward her, my heart pounding in a desperate rhythm. "Myra," I whispered, voice cracking under the weight of everything unsaid, everything buried. She offered a faint, enigmatic smile. "You're closer than you know, but the path ahead, it will demand more than endurance. It will ask you to lay bare every fragment of your guilt, every shadow you've tried to bury." Her words were cryptic, yet they resonated deep within me. The carnival's twisted horror's faces morphing in the hall of mirrors. The mocking laughter of the clown felt momentarily distant, as though her presence carved out a sanctuary from the madness. "How?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "How can I face what I've done without breaking completely?" Myra's gaze softened, but her resolve was unyielding. "To escape this place, you must stop running. You must embrace the guilt, not as a chain, but as a key. Only then will the laughter lose its teeth." I swallowed hard, the truth of her words settling like cold ash in my chest. The thought of surrendering fully to my guilt was terrifying, like stepping into the maw of a beast I'd spent years avoiding. But the alternative, the endless torment of denial, was no less cruel. Around us, the carnival breathed, lights flickering, shadows dancing grotesquely, the laughter swelling once again. Yet Myra's calm presence anchored me, a fragile lifeline in this sea of despair. "You're not alone," she whispered, reaching out to clasp my trembling hands. Her touch was cool, steady, grounding. "I've walked this path. Partial peace is possible, but it requires the courage to confront the darkest parts of yourself." I nodded, feeling a swell of determination amidst the fear. "I'm ready to try." She smiled, a flicker of hope amid the gloom. "Then listen well, for your journey is just beginning. The carnival will test you, push you to the brink. But remember, acceptance is your shield, forgiveness your salvation." As she spoke, the carnival's twisted visage seemed to waver, the cursed laughter dipping into a subdued echo. Her form began to dissolve into the mist, a whisper fading into the night. "Remember," her voice lingered, "the only way off the Ferris wheel is through the reckoning within." I stood alone once more, the weight of her words settling over me like a mantle. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but for the first time, a sliver of hope pierced the darkness. Embracing my guilt was no longer a choice. It was the only way to silence the cursed laughter and reclaim my soul. The carnival's nightmarish symphony resumed, louder than ever. But I felt a strange calm within the chaos, a fragile resolve to face the abyss, to seek forgiveness, not just from those I had wronged, but from myself. As the mist thickened and the carnival's grotesque lights flickered ominously, I took a deep breath and stepped forward into the next chapter of my torment and, perhaps, my redemption. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, its carriages creaking ominously in the night breeze. This ride, I knew, would be unlike any before, but I no longer feared it as I once did. I was beginning to understand that true escape demanded surrender. Surrender to truth, to pain, and ultimately to forgiveness. The cursed laughter echoed around me once more, but this time it sounded different, less mocking, more sorrowful, as if the carnival itself was acknowledging the first tremors of my reckoning. I climbed into the carriage, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the horizon where darkness and dawn danced in uncertain balance. The wheel began to turn, and with it, the journey inward continued. The night air was thick with the scent of popcorn and rust, but beneath it lay something fouler, the metallic temps of fear and regret. Each step I took toward the Ferris wheel was heavy with the weight of every sin I had ever tried to hide. Yet Myra's words echoed in my mind, a mantra against the despair. Embrace your guilt, find the key within. The carnival workers, once faceless and cruel, seemed to blur at the edges, their shadows stretching like fingers reaching for my resolve. But Myra's calm had planted a seed of courage I had never known I possessed. In the distance, the laughing clown's grin flickered like a broken neon sign, a reminder of the torment yet to come. But for the first time, I felt ready to face it. The reckoning was no longer a distant threat. It was here, inside me, waiting to be met with open eyes and an unflinching heart. The Ferris wheel creaked again, the chains groaning under the weight of the night. The cursed laughter ebbed and flowed, a tide I was learning to navigate rather than drown in. Myra was gone, but her guidance remained, a fragile light in the carnival's endless night. I would carry it with me into the darkness, into the silence between the cursed echoes. I gripped the cold metal of the carriage, steeling myself for the next turn, the next revelation. The journey was far from over, but with Myra's last guidance as my compass, I was no longer lost. The Ferris wheel spun on, turning my past into a crucible, my guilt into a path, and somewhere in that terrible, beautiful turning, I would find the strength to confront the truth, or be consumed by the cursed laughter forever. The ride began anew, the carnival's horrors awaiting, but I was ready now, ready to face the abyss, ready to seek the forgiveness I had long denied myself. The reckoning had begun. The shrill echoes of cursed laughter that had once clawed at my sanity now softened into a distant, sorrowful hum that wrapped around me like a cold but gentle shroud. I found myself drawn to a small clearing where shards of shattered mirrors spread across the ground, catching the flickering light of a sputtering lamp. Each fragment reflected a fractured piece of myself, distorted, fragmented, yet undeniably mine. I sank to my knees among the broken glass, hands trembling as I reached out to touch a shard that held my haunted eyes within its cracked surface. The weight of years of denial pressed down on me, and for the first time since arriving at this cursed carnival, I did not flinch. Instead, I swallowed the bitter taste of my own remorse and whispered, "I see you, all of you." A soft, sorrowful laughter echoed through the clearing, not the cruel mockery that had tormented me relentlessly, but a sound tinged with mourning. It was as if the carnival itself was acknowledging my fragile step toward acceptance. My breath hitched, and a tear traced a cold path down my cheek, the release of emotion both terrifying and strangely liberating. From the shadows, Myra emerged quietly, her silver hair shimmering faintly as she moved with a calm certainty that contrasted with my turmoil. She knelt beside me, her pale hand reaching out to rest gently on my shoulder. "It is the first step," she said softly, her voice a soothing balm against the harshness of the carnival's nightmare. "To face what you have hidden, without flinching, is to begin to free yourself." Her words settled over me like a fragile hope, fragile yet persistent. The carnival's twisted forms seemed to shrink back, the oppressive shadows retreating just enough to let a flicker of light through. I dared to look up, meeting Mira's steady gaze, and found strength in her presence, a beacon in the suffocating darkness. Watching us from a distance, the ringleader remained an imposing silhouette, his twisted carnival mask catching the faint glow of the lantern light. His eyes, glowing faintly beneath the mask, held an inscrutable expression. There was no warmth, no cruelty, only the weight of judgment and the unyielding duty he bore. Yet, in that moment, something unspoken passed between us, as if he acknowledged the sincerity of my acceptance, even if he could not grant mercy. Suddenly, a familiar, unsettling figure flickered at the edge of my vision, the laughing clown, but this time, its exaggerated grin softened into a mournful expression, the hollow eyes shimmering with something akin to sorrow. The clown's laughter, once a piercing torment, transformed into a lament, a mournful echo that seemed to mourn my pain rather than mock it. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the clown faded away into the shadows, leaving behind a silence that felt both heavy and strangely freeing. I breathed deeply, the air tasting faintly of rust and old cotton candy, the carnival's scent mingling with the sharp temps of my own awakening. The internal battle waged within me was far from over, but I had crossed a threshold. The punishment was no longer an external torment to be endured, but an internal reckoning to be faced. I accepted, I whispered, voice trembling but resolute. All of it. Mira squeezed my shoulder gently and smiled, a rare, genuine smile that illuminated the gloom. Then you are ready, she said. But remember, acceptance is just the beginning. Forgiveness, the true release, must follow. Her words hung in the air as the carnival around us seemed to hold its breath. The cursed laughter had changed, the mocking echo fading into a sorrowful hymn. The carnival, once a prison of relentless torment, now felt like a crucible where my soul was being forged anew. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain and fear, but for the first time, I glimpsed a fragile glimmer of hope beyond the cursed carnival's dark gates. I rose slowly, eyes still haunted but clearer than before. The reckoning had begun, not as a punishment to avoid, but as a truth to embrace. The carnival's nightmare was far from over, but my own journey through it had taken a vital turn. The cursed laughter, once my enemy, now seemed a sorrowful companion, mourning not just my sins, but my suffering and the faint promise of redemption. With each step away from the shattered mirrors, the carnival's twisted forms shifted subtly, the grotesque shapes and warped lights less menacing, more mournful. The Ferris wheel in the distance creaked softly in the night air, turning slowly, a silent reminder of the burden I carried and the reckoning yet to come. I knew the road ahead would test me beyond anything I had endured, that the ringleader's judgment was not yet complete, and the laughing clown's torment might return in new guises. But for now, in this fleeting moment between despair and hope, I allowed myself to feel the sorrow of my guilt and the fragile light of acceptance. The carnival was a reflection of my soul's torment, and as I faced its darkest whispers, I realized that only through this unbearable reckoning could I hope to find the mercy I so desperately sought. The cursed laughter still echoed, but it had changed. It was no longer a cruel mockery, but a mournful song of penance, a haunting melody that would accompany me toward whatever awaited beyond this forsaken carnival. And as I stepped forward, the shadows seemed to part just enough for me to glimpse the faintest glimmer of dawn on the horizon. But the journey was far from over. The carnival was waiting, and so was the ringleader. The silent question remained: could I truly forgive myself? And if I could, would the carnival finally release its hold on me? The cursed laughter, now a sorrowful dirge, whispered its haunting answer as the night deepened around me. His figure was immense, draped in shadows that swallowed the flickering lights around us. The twisted carnival mask he wore was grotesque, a carnival of horrors itself. One moment, it stretched into a cruel grin. The next, it contorted into a grimace of profound sorrow. Beneath that mask, his eyes glowed faintly, not with malice, but with an ancient, weary light that unsettled me more than any scream or shriek I had heard in this accursed place. I swallowed, my breath shallow. The cursed laughter that had haunted me since my arrival, now a distant echo, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my chest. The ringleader spoke, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the ground beneath my feet. "You see me as a judge, a tormentor, a harbinger of your doom," he said, each word weighted with the gravity of ages. "But I am bound by duty, a tether to the collective guilt of those who wander these grounds. Not evil, not mercy, but the balance between both." His words struck a chord deep within me, unraveling the black and white morality I had clung to in my desperate hope for escape. This was no simple villain. He was a complex force, an embodiment of humanity's collective conscience twisted into form. The carnival itself pulsed with his presence, a manifestation not just of punishment but of judgment that was neither cruel nor kind. As I grappled with this revelation, a pale figure emerged from the gloom mirror. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the dim carnival light, and her eyes held a calm I had not felt in this place. She stepped beside me, her voice barely above a whisper. "He is bound," she said, "not by choice, but by the weight of countless sins. His punishment is as eternal as ours." Her words offered a fragile hope, a thin thread of understanding in this labyrinth of torment. I looked back at the ringleader, who now seemed less a monster and more a sentinel, a guardian of the moral abyss. His mask shifted again, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed eyes heavy with sorrow, tired of the endless cycle of judgment he was forced to enforce. "Why do you persist?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Is there no mercy for you? No respite from this endless duty?" He tilted his head, the movement slow, deliberate. "Mercy is a fragile thing," he replied. "I am the reckoning. Without me, the guilty would wander unchecked, lost in denial and delusion. My existence is a reminder, a warning. But within this duty lies a torment as profound as yours." The carnival around us seemed to waver, the grotesque rides and twisted games blurring at the edges as my mind wrestled with this newfound complexity. The ringleader was no mere antagonist. He was a symbol of the inescapable nature of guilt and the intricate dance between punishment and redemption. Mira's presence grounded me as I absorbed the weight of his words. "You must understand," she said softly, "that to face him is to face the truth within yourself. He holds a mirror not just to your sins, but to the cost of judgment itself." A shiver ran down my spine as the cursed laughter returned, but now it carried a different timbre, less mocking, more mournful. The carnival was no longer just a place of torment. It was a crucible, testing the limits of my soul and my capacity to accept the full spectrum of guilt, judgment, and the possibility of mercy. I took a tentative step forward, eyes locked on the ringleader's glowing gaze. "If you are bound by duty," I said, "then perhaps there is a path for me to a way to bear my guilt without being consumed by it." He inclined his head once more, a gesture that felt almost like acknowledgement. "The path is narrow and fraught with peril," he warned, "but it begins with acceptance. Will you walk it?" The carnival's shadows stretched longer, the air thick with anticipation. My heart hammered in my chest as I realized this moment marked a turning point, not just in my torment, but in the story I was becoming a part of. The ringleader was not my enemy, but a guide to the darkest corridors of my own soul. As I prepared to take that first step toward reckoning, Mira's hand brushed my arm, a gentle reminder that I was not alone. The carnival awaited, its cursed laughter now a haunting melody underscoring the fragile hope that flickered within me. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, I saw the ringleader's true nature, not as a monster to be feared, but as a necessary part of the path to redemption. And with that understanding, I felt a sliver of strength piercing the veil of despair. The carnival's nightmare was changing, and so was I. But as the shadows deepened and the cursed laughter echoed anew, I knew that the hardest trials were still ahead. Could I truly embrace the judgment he embodied and find mercy within it? The answer would decide not just my fate, but the shape of the soul I would carry beyond this cursed place. The ground beneath the midway felt less solid, as if the earth itself were losing faith in the existence of this place. Tents that once loomed grotesquely, their colors garish and sickening, now shimmered like mirages, their edges blurring and bleeding into the thick, oppressive night air. The vibrant reds and sickly greens of the banners faded into dull pastels, the painted faces on the sides of the stalls melting away like wax in a cruel sun. The cursed laughter, that terrible, unrelenting soundtrack to my torment, which had once pierced the night with its malicious glee, now ebbed gradually into a distant, sorrowful whisper. It was as if the carnival itself were mourning, a dying beast lamenting its own demise. I paused, heart hammering, caught between fear and something I dared to think was hope. Could it be that the nightmare was loosening its grip? Was the relentless punishment finally losing its hold? As I stood there, the surreal midway around me fractured in slow motion. The cobblestones beneath my feet cracked and splintered like shards of my fragmented memories. Each fracture a painful glimpse into moments I had tried to bury deep within myself. The smell of burnt popcorn and stale sweat that had once assaulted my senses became faint, replaced by a cold, clean scent like winter air just before dawn. I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me, broken only by the faintest echo of Mira's voice. "Acceptance," she murmured softly, appearing beside me as if summoned by my thoughts. Her pale face was calm, her silver hair catching the meager light as she reached out a hand, steady and reassuring. "You're letting go." I wanted to believe her, to cling to the fragile thread of hope she offered. But what if it's just another trick, another loop? I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse. Myra's eyes held a strange, timeless sadness. "Then you will face it again, but this time with knowledge and strength. This time, you will not be alone." Her words warmed me, a small ember in the cold wasteland of my guilt. I looked around as the carnival's twisted attractions wavered. The Ferris wheel's once ominous silhouette flickered, its metal framework losing definition, becoming ghost-like and insubstantial. The carousel's nightmarish steeds that had snarled and bled began to dissolve into motes of light, drifting upward like fireflies reluctant to disappear. From the shadows emerged the ringleader, his tall, imposing figure a dark stain against the dissolving carnival. His twisted mask, once a perfect emblem of judgment and cruelty, now showed cracks spider-webbing across its surface. Beneath those cracks, I glimpsed something unexpected, an almost human vulnerability, a flicker of weariness in his glowing eyes. He said nothing, but his presence was no longer suffocating. Instead, it bore a weight of reluctant respect, as though he acknowledged the difficult path I had taken. Then, from the periphery, The laughing clown appeared, his grotesque grin stretched impossibly wide, his hollow eyes gleaming with malice. But even his form was unstable now, flickering like a candle about to gutter out. The manic laughter faded into a tremulous sob, the terrifying mask twisting into an expression of sorrow. His presence, once a source of relentless torment, now felt like a painful farewell. As the clown's form vanished into the encroaching shadows, a heavy silence settled over the midway. The cursed laughter was no more, replaced by a haunting quiet that felt both empty and full of promise. I was left alone, standing amid the ruins of a carnival that had been a prison for my soul. Yet, in that silence, I sensed a threshold, a fragile boundary between the nightmare and something else. Freedom, redemption, or perhaps another test, more subtle and insidious. I took a breath, steadying myself against the cold night air, and met Mira's gaze. "What now?" She smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope in her silver eyes. "Now, you walk forward." And so I did, stepping away from the fading carnival, carrying with me the weight of my sins, but also the first fragile spark of forgiveness. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I felt the possibility of light beyond the cursed laughter. Yet, as the last flickers of the carnival dissolved into mist, a whisper lingered just beyond hearing, a reminder that some echoes never truly fade, and the cycle of guilt and punishment may yet call me back again. The night was still, but I knew the carnival's shadow would forever be a part of me, a haunting melody woven into the fabric of my soul. The carnival around me seemed too dim, the garish lights flickering and waning like dying embers. The scent of rust and stale popcorn hung thickly in the air, mingling with the unmistakable undertone of the cursed laughter, low, insidious, crawling beneath the creaking metal like a living thing. My heart hammered in my chest, a wild, desperate rhythm that matched the mechanical groan as the wheel began to turn. With trembling hands, I settled onto the cracked bench, the worn leather cold against my skin. The door clanged shut behind me, sealing me within this small, swaying cage that would carry me to heights I had long feared. The first slow rotation lifted me away from the ground, the carnival below melting into an unreal blur of shadows and distorted shapes. I closed my eyes, bracing myself against the tide of memories that churned beneath my consciousness. Faces flashed behind my eyelids, betrayal etched into every line, promises broken in whispered lies, moments where cowardice had dictated my actions, and cruelty had left scars that would never heal. Each recollection burned like acid behind my eyes, searing into my soul. The carnival's surreal shadows wove themselves into these images, the twisted faces of the laughing clown and the cold, unyielding stare of the ringleader looming large in the periphery. I opened my eyes as the Ferris wheel creaked upward toward its apex. The night sky stretched endlessly, a suffocating void that mirrored the emptiness I felt inside. There, bathed in crimson light, stood the ringleader, tall and imposing, his twisted carnival mask concealing all but a pair of faintly glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. The cursed laughter swelled, mocking and relentless, as the distorted grin of the laughing clown echoed in my ears. "You cannot run." The ringleader's voice was a low rumble, neither cruel nor kind, but resolute. "Each sin is a weight you carry, and here, those weights become unbearable." I swallowed hard, every instinct urging me to flee, to deny, to plead for mercy. Yet, something steadied me. The memory of Myra's calm presence, her cryptic advice, the fragile hope she had offered. I squared my shoulders, meeting the ringleader's gaze with what little strength remained. "I am here," I whispered, voice trembling but certain. "I will face it all." The Ferris wheel paused at its zenith, suspended between earth and sky, reality and nightmare. The carnival around us began to blur and melt, colors bleeding into shadows, laughter twisting into a mournful dirge. I felt the weight of every sin, every failure, every moment I had tried to bury beneath the surface, pressing down like a suffocating shroud. But within that crushing weight, a fragile ember flickered a spark of acceptance, of recognition. I breathed deeply, the cold night air filling my lungs, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I sought forgiveness, not from the outside world, but from within myself. The descent began, the carnival dissolving into mist and shadow. Myra's voice whispered again, soft and steady, a lifeline through the storm. Only by embracing your truth can you find peace. As the carriage slowed and the ground approached, the cursed laughter shifted, losing its mocking edge and becoming a distant, sorrowful echo. I stepped off the Ferris wheel, the night air crisp against my skin, carrying the weight of my sins, but also a tentative hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the carnival's nightmare was ending. Yet, even as I walked away, the faintest trace of laughter lingered, a haunting reminder that some shadows never fully fade. The journey was far from over, but for now, I was free to face whatever came next. And so, the last ride ended, but the story, my story, was just beginning anew. The carnival had fallen silent, the cacophony of cursed laughter reduced to a distant, mournful whisper that seemed to ebb and flow with the chill wind. I sank slowly onto the cracked cobblestones beneath the looming wheel, the cold biting through my threadbare jacket, grounding me in a moment that felt fragile, precarious. I closed my eyes, willing the storm of torment that had battered me for what felt like an eternity to still. The cacophonous echoes of my sins, the grotesque reflections of my transgressions in twisted carnival mirrors, the mocking grin of the laughing clown, they all softened, fading into a silence so profound it was almost unbearable. In this quiet, raw and unvarnished, I found something unexpected. A sliver of space to breathe, to think, to confront the unspoken truth that had eluded me. Myra's presence was like a breeze through the suffocating smoke. She approached silently, her pale figure framed by the dying glow of the carnival's flickering lights. Her silver hair caught the faint luminescence, shimmering like strands of moonlight caught in a web. She knelt beside me, her hand gentle on my shoulder, a touch that carried neither judgment nor pity, only calm. "It begins with you," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread weaving through the cold. "The forgiveness you seek cannot come from outside. It must rise from within, no matter how heavy the burden or how deep the wounds." Her words stirred something long dormant. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and for the first time, I dared to look inward without flinching. The memories that had clawed at my sanity, the betrayals, the selfish acts, the moments I had buried like poison, were no longer distant screams, but parts of me that demanded acknowledgement. The ringleader emerged from the shadows then, his tall frame draped in darkness, the twisted carnival mask obscuring his face. His faintly glowing eyes pierced the gloom, watching me with an intensity that was neither cruel nor kind but inexorable. He was the embodiment of judgment itself, the living proof that guilt is inescapable. Yet, in that moment, I realized his presence was not a sentence, but a challenge. To break free, I had to face not just the sins, but the self I had condemned. I opened my mouth, voice trembling yet steady, and spoke the words that had been trapped in the deepest recesses of my heart. "I forgive myself." The silence that followed was profound. The carnival's grotesque structures, the twisted rides, the warped tents, The eerie laughter began to waver, dissolving like smoke caught in a gentle dawn wind. The oppressive weight that had shackled my soul lifted, replaced by a bittersweet clarity. Tears streaked down my cheeks, not from despair, but from the release of a burden I had carried alone for so long. The cursed laughter softened into a sorrowful melody, a dirge for the sins acknowledged and the pain endured. And then it too faded, leaving only the quiet promise of a new beginning. Mira smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting a light that had been absent for ages. "This is the first step," she said softly. "The path remains difficult, but you have chosen to walk it with open eyes." I rose unsteadily, the shadows around me retreating like a tide pulled back by the moon's gentle command. The carnival, the nightmare that had consumed me, was dissolving, but the mark it left was indelible. I would carry the weight of my sins, but no longer as chains, rather as a solemn reminder of the journey toward forgiveness. As the Ferris wheel creaked one last time, turning slowly in a void where reality and nightmare blurred, I stepped forward. The road ahead was uncertain, the echo of cursed laughter a memory etched into my soul. But for the first time, I felt the fragile stirrings of hope, and in that hope, I found the courage to face whatever lay beyond the carnival's vanishing edge. The night stretched on, long and quiet, as if the world itself held its breath. The carnival's lights had dimmed, the tents sagged like weary beasts, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fading memories. Yet within me, a different kind of light kindled, one born not of escape or denial, but of acceptance and redemption. It was not the end, I knew. The path of forgiveness was winding and steep, littered with shadows of doubt and fear. But the first step, the hardest step, had been taken. The carnival that came for me had done its terrible work, but now the torment could cease. I could cease it. The cursed laughter might never fully leave, a ghostly reminder of the past, but it no longer ruled me. And as dawn's first light bled across the horizon, I felt the stirrings of a future unbound by the chains of guilt. The carnival had come for me, but I would not be consumed. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to walk it toward forgiveness, toward freedom, toward whatever awaited beyond the endless loop. Not with the abruptness of a snuffed candle, but with the slow, deliberate unraveling of a tapestry worn thin by time and torment. The garish lights that had once splashed reds and yellows over the warped tents now flickered weakly, their brilliance bleeding into a creeping grey mist that oozed across the cracked pavement and swallowed the carnival's grotesque attractions. The cursed laughter, once a ceaseless, mocking roar, dwindled into fragile whispers, then silence. I stood alone at the edge of the midway, the air heavy with the absence of sound, save the distant rustle of wind stirring loose debris. My breath came unevenly, a fragile rhythm in the hollow void that the carnival left behind. My skin prickled with the residue of fear and revelation, the raw weight of sins once buried, now etched deep beneath my flesh and bone. And yet, amid the desolation, there was a strange stillness of fragile peace that began to settle like dust on cracked glass. The world around me had changed, or perhaps I had, as the carnival dissolved. Shades of twisted tents curled inward, their edges fraying as if being erased from existence. The Ferris wheel, my endless tormentor and confessor, creaked one last time before its metal skeleton dissolved into the mist. The carousel's haunting music faded, leaving only an echo in the recesses of my mind. From the haze, a figure emerged, pale, ethereal, her silver hair catching the dying light. Myra. Her calm eyes met mine, offering the faintest of smiles, a beacon of fragile hope amid the ruin. "You have done what many cannot," she said softly, her voice a balm that soothed the ragged edges of my soul. The path is never easy, but it is yours to walk now. I wanted to ask what lay beyond this fading nightmare, what freedom could truly mean when the scars of guilt remained etched within me like invisible tattoos. But Myra's form wavered, dissolving into the mist as the carnival's shadows receded. Her last words lingered, a whisper against the silence. Forgiveness begins within. A chill swept through the air as the shadowy figure of the ringleader appeared, his twisted carnival mask gleaming faintly beneath half-lidded eyes that glowed with ancient sorrow. He regarded me with a gaze that bore the weight of uncountable judgments, a complex blend of duty and despair. "Your reckoning is complete," he intoned, voice low and resonant, echoing across the empty midway. "The cycle is broken, but the burden endures." I nodded, the truth of his words settling deep within. This was no simple mercy, no triumphant escape. Redemption was a landscape fraught with jagged edges and shadows. The ringleader's form began to crumble, his mask cracking and falling away like brittle porcelain, until he was nothing more than a fading silhouette swallowed by the mist. Left alone, I took a tentative step forward. The carnival was gone, yet the echoes of its cursed laughter lingered faintly in the corners of my mind, a haunting refrain that reminded me of the darkness I had faced. The burden of my sins was not lifted, it was transformed, carried now as a quiet weight within me, rather than a roaring torment without. The night air was cool against my skin, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds. In the stillness, I found a moment's clarity, a fragile hope that whispered of beginnings rather than endings. The carnival's nightmare had passed, but my journey was just beginning. I did not know where this path would lead, nor what shadows awaited beyond the vanishing point of the carnival. But I knew this much. To walk forward, I must carry my guilt not as a chain, but as a testament to the truth I had unearthed. The cursed laughter was silenced, but the echoes of my reckoning would follow me, a haunting melody of both punishment and promise. And so I stepped away from the fading mist, the carnival's ghost dissolving behind me, into a world both unknown and achingly familiar. With each step, I embraced the fragile hope that redemption, elusive and imperfect, was a light worth seeking, even in the darkest of nights. I stood alone on the edge of the barren grounds where twisted rides had once lurched grotesquely against a sky bruised by the dying light of twilight. The air was thick with a silence so profound it felt almost unnatural, a vacuum that seemed to swallow even the faintest breath. Yet, beneath that silence, I thought I heard ether-cursed laughter, faint and brittle as the remnants of a shattered dream, echoing from somewhere deep within the mist that clung to the earth like a ghostly shroud. The night wrapped around me like a cold cloak, the chill seeping through my clothes and settling into my bones. I was alone, and yet the weight of all that had transpired pressed down on me with relentless gravity. The carnival, the endless loop of torment, the grotesque manifestations of my sins, the cursed laughter that had haunted me had finally receded. But with its retreat, a new kind of torment took hold, the haunting ambiguity of what lay ahead. I did not move. The ground beneath my feet was cracked and uneven, littered with shards of broken mirrors and faded confetti. It was as if the very fabric of the carnival's nightmare had been torn apart, leaving only fragments scattered across the earth. My reflection, caught in a splintered shard of glass, fractured and distorted, stared back at me, eyes haunted, shadowed, searching. I reached down cautiously, fingertips brushing the jagged edges. The mirror trembled, and for a moment, I thought I saw more than just my own facile kaleidoscope of memories, regrets, and ghosts flickering beneath the surface. From the corner of my eye, a soft presence emerged. Mira appeared beside me, her pale form bathed in the waning light. Her silver hair shimmered faintly, and her eyes held that same calm empathy she had offered throughout the carnival's horrors. She said nothing at first, merely observing the silence with me. Then, in a voice that was both gentle and enigmatic, she spoke. "Redemption is a fragile thing," she said, her words drifting like a whispered breeze. "It is not a place you arrive at, but a path you walk, often unsure, sometimes stumbling. The carnival teaches us that guilt is never truly gone. It lingers like shadows at dusk, always there, always waiting." Her words resonated deep within me. Redemption was no neat absolution, no clear escape from the past. It was a tenuous balance, a fragile thread stretched between hope and despair. I glanced at her, searching for reassurance, but found only the same quiet uncertainty reflected in her gaze. Before I could reply, a dark shape coalesced in the distance a tall, shadowy figure with a twisted carnival mask, eyes glowing faintly beneath its twisted visage. The ringleader, the embodiment of judgment and punishment. It watched silently, a sentinel of the moral reckoning I had undergone. Its presence was neither threatening nor comforting. It was simply there, a reminder that the past's debts were never fully paid. The ringleader's gaze seemed to pierce through me, weighing my soul with an inscrutable judgment. I stood rooted, feeling the full weight of my sins pressing down once more, yet tempered by the knowledge that I had faced them, that I had accepted the burden I carried. The cursed laughter, once so mocking and relentless, had faded into a sorrowful echo, lament rather than a torment. Myra stepped closer, her voice a fragile anchor in the swirling uncertainty. "The carnival fades, but its lessons remain. You carry your sins still, but you have begun to forgive yourself. That is the beginning, not the end." I looked down again at the broken mirror shard, my reflection fragmented yet undeniably mine. Tentatively, I reached out and touched it, feeling the rough edges beneath my fingers. My image shimmered, fractured, yet somehow whole. It was a symbol of my fractured self, the pieces of guilt, remorse, hope, and fear all tangled together in a delicate dance. As the night deepened, the carnival grounds dissolved further into mist and shadow. The echoes of laughter faded to silence. Yet, within me, a new sound stirred, a quiet heartbeat of possibility amid the ruins. Redemption was no promise, no guarantee. It was an ambiguous, haunting thing, a balance between salvation and damnation that I would carry forward. Could I truly be free? Or was this piece just another layer of the endless loop, another cruel twist in the carnival's design? The question lingered, unanswered, as I stepped away from the shattered remnants of my nightmare into the uncertain dawn, and somewhere, far beyond the mist, the faintest trace of cursed laughter whispered still. The night was over, but the story was far from finished. I sat motionless, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. Yet beneath that silence, the faintest sound threaded its way through the stillness, a low, warped ripple of laughter. Not loud, but unmistakably there. The cursed laughter, the same chilling echo that had haunted every step inside the carnival, now lurking in the quiet corners of my mind. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the sound, but it clung to me, a spectral thread weaving through my thoughts. It was as if the carnival had never truly left, its twisted echoes embedded deep in the recesses of my brain. The laughter was no longer a physical torment, but a lingering ghost, a reminder that the weight of guilt is not so easily discarded. Memories surface flickering and fragmented, like shards of broken glass, reflecting unfamiliar faces and forgotten moments. The distorted mirrors of that hall of betrayal, the mocking grin of the laughing clown, the solemn gaze of Mirror. Each image was a fragment of a past I could neither fully grasp nor entirely escape. Suddenly, a glimmer of silver caught the edge of my vision. I turned, sharply, heart pounding, but found only the shifting shadows. Yet, in that moment, the figure of Mira appeared pale, serene, her silver hair like moonlight pouring over her shoulders. She offered no words, only a gentle nod, a silent reassurance that even amid this endless echo, there might be a thread of peace. Then, as swiftly as she came, she faded, swallowed by the darkness. The laughter grew louder in my mind, a manic crescendo that clawed at my sanity. The laughing clown's grotesque face emerged, the hollow eyes boring into me, its grin stretching impossibly wide. The sound was no longer just in my head. It was visceral, a physical shudder that rattled my bones. Yet, beneath the terror, beneath the torment, I sensed a shift. The laughter was less mocking now, more sorrowful, as if the torment itself wept for my suffering. I forced myself to stand, legs trembling beneath me. Pushing open the door, I stepped into the night air. The cold bit into my skin, sharp and real, grounding me in this moment. The street was empty, bathed in the pale light of distant street lamps. No carnival lights flickered here, no grotesque figures lurked. Yet the echoes of laughter lingered just beyond hearing, a haunting residue of a nightmare that refused to fade. I swallowed hard, the night air thick with unspoken fears. Was this freedom, or merely a pause between cycles? The carnival's physical form might have vanished, but the psychological scars remained etched deep into my being. Could I ever truly outrun the guilt that summoned it? Could forgiveness, elusive and fragile, ever quiet the cursed laughter within? As I walked down the silent street, I carried the weight of those questions like a shadow trailing my every step. The echoes of laughter were a reminder that some sins are not so easily absolved, and some punishments do not end with the closing of a carnival gate. Still, beneath the dread, a faint spark of hope flickered, a fragile, uncertain light that, perhaps, someday might grow strong enough to banish the darkness for good. But for now, the night was long, and the laughter lingered. A reminder that the past is never truly gone, only waiting to be faced once more. And so, the echoes of laughter followed me into the silence, a haunting refrain from a carnival that came for me and, perhaps, would never truly leave. I found myself seated on a cracked wooden bench beneath the pallid glow of a solitary street lamp, its light casting long, trembling shadows that danced erratically with the soft mist swirling at my feet. The carnival was gone, no vanished, as if it had never been more than a cruel dream, but its presence lingered, an indelible stain upon my soul that would not simply wash away with time. I stared down at my hands, trembling slightly, tracing the invisible scars etched deep beneath my skin. Each mark was a memory, a sin confronted in the relentless carousel of torment that the carnival had forced me to endure. Betrayal, cowardice, selfishness, all laid bare in grotesque, nightmarish clarity. Redemption had come, yes, but not as a bomb that soothed or erased. Instead, it was a weighter burden I would carry forward. Heavy as lead, but strangely precious, for it was proof that I had faced the darkness within and had not been consumed. From the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement caught my attention. There she was, Myra, pale and spectral, her silver hair shimmering faintly in the dim light. She stood silently beside me, her gaze steady and calm, radiating an empathetic warmth that seemed almost otherworldly. Without a word, she offered a gentle nod of encouragement, a gesture that spoke of understanding and hope. Then, as quickly as she had appeared, she faded back into the mist, leaving me alone once more, but somehow less isolated. Her presence reminded me that redemption, while partial and fraught with pain, was not an impossible dream. It was a fragile thread woven through the tapestry of suffering, a light to guide me through the darkest nights ahead. Yet, the question gnawed at me relentlessly. How does one live with the scars of unforgivable sins, even after seeking forgiveness? How do you silence the cursed laughter that once echoed so cruelly in your ears when it now only murmurs in the quiet moments, a haunting reminder of all that was lost? I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, trying to anchor myself in the present. The carnival's grotesque rides, the twisted attractions, the mocking laughter of the laughing clown all had faded into memory. But their lessons remained etched in the marrow of my bones. The ringleader's shadowy figure, the unbearable reckoning with my own soul, the agonizing acceptance of guilt, these were the things that defined me now. Slowly, I rose from the bench and looked up at the night sky. The stars above were indifferent, distant pinpricks of cold light that offered no answers, only the vast, inscrutable expanse of the unknown. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the carnival had vanished into the darkness, its cursed laughter transforming into a soft, sorrowful echo that gradually faded into silence. I was free, yes, but not unscarred. The burden I carried was heavy, yet it was mine to bear. As I began walking into the uncertain future, footsteps echoing softly on the damp pavement, I understood that redemption was not an end but a beginning, a fragile hope wrapped in the endless struggle to live with oneself. The carnival's nightmare was over, but the journey was far from complete. Somewhere deep inside, the laughter still whispered, an eternal reminder that some sins never truly die, and the weight of the past shapes every step forward. I swallowed hard, the taste of salt and resolve mingling in my throat. The burden carried forward was mine, and somehow that was enough to keep moving. The night stretched out before me, dark and unyielding, but within its depths flickered the faintest glimmer of light. And for the first time in a long while, I dared to follow it. The carnival was gone, but its shadow remained, and so did I. Where once the carnival had sprawled in grotesque splendor its twisted rides, the distorted laughter echoing through the dark space was now nothing more than a mist-shrouded clearing. The fog curled and shifted like a living thing, swallowing the last remnants of color and light, leaving the narrator standing in a void that was both physical and psychological. I stood alone, the weight of the carnival's fading presence pressing down on me like a shroud. The cursed laughter, the relentless mocking echo that had haunted every rotation of the Ferris wheel lingered still. It whispered through the mist, a ghostly breath that slithered around my senses, refusing to be silenced. It was as if the carnival's nightmare had not truly ended, but had instead folded itself into the fabric of my being, a permanent scar etched deep into my soul. A shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from the uncanny certainty that I was being watched. At the edge of my vision, a shadow flickered and twisted, a shape both familiar and terrifying. The ringleader, his tall, shadowy form emerged like a spectre from the darkness, the twisted carnival mask gleaming faintly beneath the shroud. His eyes glowing with an eerie, faint light pierced the gloom, boring into me with an inescapable judgment that felt ancient and eternal. "You think this is over?" His voice was a whisper carried on the wind, both accusing and resigned. The carnival never truly leaves those it claims. I swallowed hard, the taste of fear and despair rising in my throat. The ringleader's presence was a chilling reminder that my journey through torment was far from complete. The cycle of guilt and punishment was not a line with a clear end, but a loop, twisting and turning, ever returning. From the shadows, a soft glow emerged, delicate and fragile, like a candle flickering in a tempest. Myra stepped forward, her silver hair shimmering in the pale light, her faded carnival garb whispering of faded hopes and broken dreams. Her eyes were calm, carrying the weight of her own partial redemption, a quiet strength born of acceptance. "There is mercy," she said softly, her voice a balm against the harshness of the night, "but it must come from within. Forgiveness is not given, it is claimed, piece by painful piece." Her smile was fleeting, a bittersweet curve that held both hope and sorrow. Then, as if carried away by the winds of fate, she faded back into the mist, leaving me with the fragile ember of possibility glowing faintly inside my chest. But the fragile comfort was shattered in an instant. The grotesque grin of the laughing clown erupted from the shadows, its exaggerated, distorted face looming close. Hollow eyes bore into mine, and the cursed laughter burst forth like a tempest, a mocking cacophony that reverberated through every corner of my mind. It was the embodiment of my deepest fears, my relentless guilt made flesh and sound. I staggered back, clutching my head as the laughter twisted and turned, a cruel symphony that threatened to tear apart the fragile walls of my sanity. The carnival's nightmare had not ended, had merely changed shape, slipping into the folds of my consciousness, where it could torment me endlessly. "You can never leave," the laughter whispered, "for you are the carnival now." The fog thickened, swallowing the figures of Myra and the ringleader, leaving me alone once more. But something within me had shifted. The unbearable weight of guilt, the crushing despair of punishment, the flicker of forgiveness, I held them all in tension, a fragile balance between hope and torment. Was this my fate? An endless loop of cycles, forever riding the Ferris wheel of my sins? Or could the ember of forgiveness kindle a flame strong enough to burn away the cursed laughter once and for all? As the night deepened, the carnival's shadow stretched on, a spectre in the dark corners of my mind, and I stood at the crossroads of despair and redemption, caught in the eternal dance of the guilty, where the only certainty was the haunting echo of cursed laughter that never truly dies. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint, eerie melody, a tune that was both a farewell and a summons. The endless loop awaited, and I was still riding, still searching for a way off the Ferris wheel. But the ride was far from over. The carnival had come for me once again.